Okay. It is October 29th, and I call this meeting for the Robla School District to order. Please, we are doing something different today. We are playing a video for the Pledge of Allegiance to kind of make it look a bit more professional. So, Adam, please go ahead and present the video.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, very good. Moving on. Taking roll call for this board meeting. All board members are present and accounted for, which moves us on to the adoption of the agenda. There are no amendments to the agenda. So is there a motion to approve the agenda as is?
A move.
Second.
It's been moved in second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. The agenda has been adopted. Moving on to item 2, communications. And the first on this is public communications. This is when individuals wishing to address the board on any non-agenda items which are of interest to the public and within the board's jurisdiction may do so. The board may not act upon items presented during public comment, but may briefly respond to statements made, ask a clarifying question, or refer speakers to district staff or other resources. You may submit a public comment in YouTube on the live chat during the meeting, and I will review and share it with the board. You may also submit a public comment to Gamut meetings on agenda items and enter your name and email address. And Shari, our board assistant, will review and provide comments on those to the board and enter those to the meeting. So this is the time to enter comments, and there's a little bit of delay, so we will wait for I don't know, about 30 seconds or so to make sure that there are no missed comments. Okay, I think that's enough time. We will move along, as I did not see any comments in the public section. Moving along to item 3, presentations and information. And first on our agenda today is the Robla New Heart Charter Update, 7/8 Charter Update. And our contact person is Harinder Pagani, and she is here. Go ahead and take it away.
He is here. Mr. Pagani.
Hello.
My apologies for really mispronouncing your name. Thank you very much, Mr. Pagani.
No problem. Thank you. Thank you. It's an honor to be back amongst all of you, and glad you all are well. And I am thankful for the opportunity to give you all this update. And so should I just start with the screen share and proceed?
Yes, that's fine.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
There we go. Okay. So just a moment. Okay. All right. Can you all see where I'm at right now?
Yeah. Yes.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
perfect.
Yes.
All right, I'm just going to move into the slideshow then. Okay, there we go. All right. So this will be an update on where we started in December and what we've been doing the last 10 months. And so this is where we were in 2019 when we went through this process of charter petition approval. And we started that particular process in August of last year. And then on December 18th, you all, our board approved the charter petition unanimously. So since that time, we've continued with, this will be a recurring theme that you'll hear me talk about, is just collaboration and building, continuing to build relational trust with our superintendent, with various team members from Robla School District. And so we've been able to, for the most part, be able to meet pretty regularly. And since August, we've really been meeting on a monthly basis, if not more often, but definitely once a month with Superintendent Reyes. And discussions have focused on a variety of development areas. The biggest perhaps being just around facilities and where will we locate this charter school. Okay, and so let me continue on. In developing a charter school, there's a lot of organizational things that have to be done. There's quite a task list that we had when we started doing this work after the charter petition approval. A lot of these things are both at the federal level and the state level. So we've completed pretty much everything that we set out to do in terms of having the charter school registered with the IRS as a tax exempt organization. We have our employer identification number, as well as filing articles of incorporation and obtaining that with the state of California. And then there are various other things like the data universal numbering system, the system for award management, and so forth. So these processes are not difficult, but they take time. And so we've been focusing on those, so on the state and the federal level. And so this also allows us to be recognized by the federal, the US Department of Education, for us to be able to receive grants, such as the Public Charter Schools Grant Program that the California Department of Education administers. So without having all of this in place, we would not be able to be eligible for funding such as that. And then just continuing with the organizational setup of our program, really just preparing to do all the steps that the CDE, as well as the Division of the State Architect, requires as it relates to our facility development. So I'm pleased to say that we have been able to, even through all of the shutdowns and not being able to have folks as accessible as they normally would at CDE and the DSA, we've been able to connect with folks and continue on this path. So we've been able to establish things like our CDS code. We've been able to do a lot of things around our just simple things like the State Board of Education has approved our charter school number. So all of this, again, recognized by the CDE and folks from the state level, which allows us, again, to move forward toward opening the school. So one thing that's significant is that in these conversations that the Superintendent Reyes and I have been having, in May, we sat down and we had to make a very difficult decision with all of these, with everything going on with the pandemic, but also the challenges that we face with trying to have a facility to house the school program. So we made the very difficult decision to delay the opening of the school until fall of 2021. So with that, where we're at is we've been continuing to do the work behind the scenes around funding, state, federal foundation grants as well. as well as facilities funding that we've been looking into. And Enoch Young, he will join us here in a moment, and he'll talk more about where we're at with the facilities funding. As well as then moving forward now, fast forwarding to where we're at around staffing. This is a very important piece, of course, because these are the folks who will be in front of our students as they come from Robla School District 6th graders. They enroll into 7th grade. That's critical for us. So we've been prepping for staff recruitment. I've met twice this month with Nicole Sullivan, our Chief of Personnel, and we've had very positive, productive meetings as well. And again, that same theme of collaboration, sharing best practices from Robla and incorporating them into the way we operate so that students have a seamless program coming from 6th grade into 7th grade and beyond. What we are planning to do is in November is to launch into our online staff recruitment campaign. So we will advertise for teachers and support staff beginning in November, and then December and January, we will actually begin doing online interviews and demo lessons for teachers in particular. So we want to be able to get into this whole staffing process as early as possible, because the longer we wait, the quality of our candidates goes down month by month. So we want to be a step ahead in that process. One other thing to note is that something that we've been working on again since we had this unplanned year of development where we don't have the school up and running is I've mentioned in the past in terms of teacher credentialing and induction and so forth. Something that we're pursuing is just having a CTC accreditation for us to be able to provide, in the very least, induction as well as teacher credentialing for our teachers. We want to make sure that we use that platform, not just for credentialing though. That's really our way of providing excellent professional development, which includes coaching and support for our teachers. So just when you see that up there, that's why we are pursuing that process of becoming the charter school, becoming accredited to provide those programs. And then students and families, similarly, what we've been working on is just prepping for student enrollment this month. And what we'd like to do is at each Robla Elementary campus, we would like to have enrollment meetings for families for next fall in November as well as in December. So what we typically do is we meet with families, and of course now it'll more than likely be through Zoom, but we'd like to offer as many different ways of being able to get information to families. And again, in collaboration with Superintendent Reyes and our district office folks who head these campaigns up for the district, we would like to continue to partner to provide outreach to families and make them aware of enrollment being available for the middle school, starting up for next fall. And again, we want to do this early. The longer we wait, then it lessens the likelihood of parents being aware of our school opening up. And then the big question now for us, because we've been able to, as I said, achieve a lot of the things that we wanted to do as it relates to just our programming and all the behind the scenes things around organization and so forth. But we're still, figuring out where. This is a slide actually that we used in the charter petition process of just, where would we locate this middle school? And definitely we, wanted to make sure that the middle school was located within the Robla School District boundaries. And again, at that point, last October, November, when we were in these discussions with you all, we talked about, if this charter is approved, then the facility location would be determined by the Robla School District Board of Trustees, which is a big reason why we're here tonight. So in terms of the school facility, I mentioned, the multiple conversations and the consistent conversations we've been having with Superintendent Reyes, as well as Emilio Flores from CFW. And we have really built this partnership with our architect, Mike Rath. He'll be joining us here in a moment, and he'll share potential development timelines depending on what location the board sees as the best for the middle school. And what we've been able to do is just continue to work closely with Superintendent Reyes and team members from the district. We've looked at a couple of different, kind of narrowed it down to a couple of different sites with our conversations. We've looked at the empty, there's a park, if you will. I believe it is a vacant park at Glenwood Elementary as a temporary site, as well as the Norwood site itself, and how we could go about doing that. And as I said, our architect will present potential timelines for how that would look. And we're continuing to, again, meet with Superintendent Reyes, and our team will continue to do that throughout this whole process, because this process will definitely be ongoing for a while. And then I'm going to actually switch my screen sharing, because you all won't be able to share or be able to see that. But I'm going to pause there and then have Mike Rath, our architect, join me in the conversation, and he'll talk about just potential, depending on the Norwood site location, what that would look like in terms of the timeline for development there and so forth. So I'm going to just pull this up, this timeline. And can you all see that with my screen sharing? This Norwood site schedule?
I see the PowerPoint that you had before.
Okay. Sorry, Michael. Let me stop that, and I will pull up the other piece then. Okay. Michael, can you see that now?
Yes.
Okay. And so Superintendent Reyes and board, this is Michael Rath. He is our architect. He is with HMC Architects. And Mike and I have worked on projects for facilities previously. And so I'm very, very pleased to have Michael with us on this whole project. And I will let Mike walk us through this. But before we do that, are there questions, clarification, anything that we can do before we launch into the details of potential timelines here?
Mr. Pagani, this might be a good time for me to kind of underscore the concept that's being put forth here, because this is a new concept to the board, something that we really haven't discussed previously. And so we thought tonight would be an optimal night to kind of just bring this concept forth, this idea that the district owns some land that the district has not used for a very long time. The board's aware that we have the Norwood site, and the Norwood site has not been anything that has been part of our facilities planning. And historically, it's just been something that has been vacant, and there has not been any real planning for that. And so in our discussions with A New Hope, the concept came up, would Robla be open to the idea of allowing this land to be used to build the New Hope Charter School? So that's what we're talking about tonight. It's a new concept. It's clearly something that we're just beginning to explore. And this is the opportunity for the board to kind of get some information about the concept, and then provide us with some direction about what their thoughts are about the idea, as well as what they would see as next steps in order for them to move forward with, if they choose to do so, with this as an idea.
Yeah. Thank you for that context. And so when we look at these different sites, again, this is just a rough schedule that Mike has put together for you all to have an idea of what it would take for us to have either one of these locations So these are just two locations that we've been talking about. But again, we're just introducing these concepts to you all. Enoch Young, he's on the call as well. He'll talk in terms of funding that we've been having conversations with charter school developer funding groups as well. So we'll jump into this, and Mike will give us an overview of what would it look like if we were to try to use the Norwood site to open our middle school. Michael?
Yeah, thank you, Harinder. So yeah, just to emphasize, this is a very, very rough schedule. Harinder and I did meet with DSA, Division of State Architect, just to kind of get an idea from them, what it's going to take. And then we also, probably more importantly, we met with CDE, California Department of Education, to find out. And they didn't have much information on that site, which means that probably the biggest time kind of hindrance of using this site, or it's going to take the most amount of time, is that we need to do an initial school site evaluation and get that approved from the Department of Education. And the biggest kind of, again, time-consuming part of that is DTSC, Department of Toxic Substance Control, is going to we'll have to do a report for them and get approval. And then we're also going to have to do some soils reports and get those approved by CGS. So kind of with all of that, the other thing that we looked at, that the Harinder and I have talked about, is how can we do this in like 2 increments? One where we would have kind of a temporary, because if we do temporary, they could rent some portables. We could put the infrastructure in for the permanent and for the temporary, but then when the temporary goes away, you still have the infrastructure, and you're only paying for those utilities once. So just to look at the schedule, starting November, today, tomorrow, when's the first, this weekend, but is programming. And that's just where we determine, how many rooms we need, how big those rooms are, what kind of sports programs, just understanding all the vision for this school. So along with that, we'd be doing, submitting to the Department of Education, putting together the documents that they need. And they said it could be for approval up to 6 months. And then we have the holidays too. So, it's, 6 to 7 months from the time that we get going till we actually have approval on that site. The other thing that Department of Ed looks at when they look at sites, and really what they're looking at is for safety of the students. So they want to see if there's any gas lines, if there's any big electrical lines, if there's trains, and then they look to where the nearest airport is. And so those are all the kind of things that they're looking at. And then we'd be doing the soils report and then a site survey. And as we get into that, then we can start to get into a design. And what I've shown here, you can see schematic design, where schematic design, we do both the increment 1, which is the temporary kind of portables, and the increment 2, which would be a permanent structure of some kind. And
are we supposed to see a schematic? Because right now all I see is
No, all you should see is the schedule.
Okay, all right. I'm sorry.
Yeah, so
okay.
we haven't started on any schematics or anything. So this is just kind of this is the timeline and the process that we need to go through. But we plan it all out so that we know exactly what's going on that site. And even though we could go, and then we could, when we get into the construction documents, the actual documents that the contractor will build off of and bid off of, we'd separate it. And so then the increment 1 that's shown on the screen, which will take probably six weeks to do those drawings and get them ready for the state architect, which is pretty quick. And then the state architect's only going to take about a month to get approval. We can bid. The site work is 2 to 3 months, and then setting the portables is about a month and a half. So what I'm showing here is that if we were to do that kind of that temporary on the Norwood site, we could probably have it up and running by December 2021, which is kind of mid-year, but that would probably be the best. And then what else we're showing here is then the increment 2, which would be the permanent building, which is going to take a little bit longer to do the design. And we're saying that, the construction documents are going to be about 6 months, a lot more detail into them. And then the DSA approval and review of that is going to be 4 to 5 months. And then I would say that construction for this will take about 18 months. It'll take a little bit over a year and a half to build. So that's kind of what it would take as far as schedule, rough schedule for the Norwood site. So any questions? So Harinder, did you want to look at the other?
Yeah. And so the challenge here for us is that building at the Norwood site, even temporarily, getting the temporary portables there, that won't be ready to go for us until January of 2022. So that would be, past our target of opening up the school in August of 2021. So that would require us to have some sort of temporary housing for, even if it's for, August through December of next fall. So we think this is the right place where we could build, but that's the big challenge. So to what we've done is I'm going to scroll up and show you like potentially the Norwood not Norwood, but potentially at this park site adjacent to Glenwood Elementary School. What would that look like if we were to set up potentially there? Because again, Norwood would not be ready until January of 2022. We need something in the meantime to house the students. So again, this is just where we're just sharing ideas. Like Superintendent Reyes said, this is nothing set in stone for certain. So Mike, would you share, is this where you want to start?
Yes. And so the thought with this would be to use that little park that the district got from the city. It's about an acre. And we did do just kind of a rough layout. Could we get enough portables on that site for a middle school? And we were able to get enough on there and have an admin building and a couple restroom buildings. It's pretty tight, but we could get all those things on there. And again, this would be for temporary is what we're looking at here. In November, we're a little bit behind schedule, but November we can start the construction documents, 4 to 6 weeks to get those, so that we could submit them to the state architect. The other thing is we contacted 3 different portable companies that rent portable classrooms that are DSA approved. And we got pricing just so Harinder would have a little bit of an idea of what it was going to cost to do this. But the other question that I had is, if we want to get these portables, when would we have to say, yes, we want them? And they were saying around November, December. Their portables start to get, whatever they have in stock, start to get snatched up, for the next summer. So that would have to be, relatively quickly that the Harinder would have to reach out to one of these companies and say, yes, this is how many we need for next year. And then DSA, again, would be about a month to a month and a half for approval. Because it's they're portables that are they're called PCs. So they've been plan checked before. They've been approved through DSA before. Really what DSA is looking for is to make sure that the site meets, fire code and access. And so we could potentially even do it over the counter so that the review would only be a week. So, but I've shown here two months just in case something comes up. So when we did meet with DSA, one of the things that came up was that because that site, they're saying that site, even though it's adjacent to the school, the existing Glenwood school, it's still, because you acquired it later, a new site. And so what we would need to do is a soils report and submit it to CGS. They can take, we've been actually having really good success recently, that they've been about 2 months in getting us approval, but they can be up to 6 months too. So that's something that would need to go get going pretty quickly on. The other thing, and I said start PG&E application, but that's the other thing that takes quite a while is PG&E. So, we'll need to do a design because we're going to need new electrical service to the site for these new portables. But then PG&E gets that, and they do a design, and that can take up to 6 months for them to do what they need to.
Michael, can you hold on a second?
Yes.
I was just alerted that one of our board members was trying to get back into the meeting. I just want to make sure that that's being addressed.
I'm back in, Ken.
Okay. Go ahead and continue. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. We did reach out to a contractor, one that I know that has done work in the district, Clark and Sullivan, and I kind of told them what we were doing, gave them a list of, kind of what the scope of work was. And they said the site work could probably be done in about 2 months. It's not a lot of site work that we're doing, getting pads ready and the utilities up to the buildings. And then the buildings themselves can be placed relatively quickly. And so, with this scheme, it's tight, but the middle school could move in August, start end of August, probably beginning of September. So any questions on that schedule?
So,
what were you about to say, Mr. Reyes?
I was just going to say, I just feel like, I don't know, I want us to be really clear about the concepts that we're talking about here. So we've said then that what we are looking at is the idea of using the Norwood site as the permanent location for the school. But as you see, that's going to take a while to get up and running. So I guess I just feel like we haven't said this explicitly. So now what we're talking about is this concept of using our Glenwood school site, because we have the space where the former park was, the former Glenwood Park, which the board will recall, the city gifted us that space, and we haven't really been able to utilize it because we haven't had the funds necessary to refurbish that as a park. So it's really been shuttered for a long time, and that could be the location where we, as Mr. Rath is describing here, would set up then a temporary site that we could get up and running quickly, so that the school could be up and running then for that target date in August of 2021. And then we would function on that site temporarily until we were to build out the permanent site. So there's two concepts here. That idea of a temporary site at Glenwood for a couple of years, and then we build out the permanent site on the Norwood land.
Okay, yeah, I've got a few questions. I don't know if I'm sure other board members might have questions as well, but it's kind of hard for me to picture this without schematics or anything like that, or even an artist concept, because I'm thinking about the Glenwood site, that park, and trying to picture it, and it seems kind of small. So can you tell me a little bit about if you did put the temporary site there, what would it look like? Would you share parking with Glenwood, or is that something that's kind of incorporated in there? How many buildings? The traffic flow, things like that. I'm trying to get a sense of.
Yeah. And Harinder, would you mind if I shared my screen? So I did do a quick, sorry. I'm sharing the wrong. Sorry about that. Okay. Do you see the Glenwood site?
Uh-huh.
Okay. Yeah. So this is really, really rough, quick. So don't, it's not, this is just to get an idea. So these are, what we've shown here is 12 classrooms, 2 restrooms, and then an admin portable that would be about a size of a classroom, and we divide that up. And so the park here's the curb for the existing parking. So this is kind of the edge. There's 3 portables that are over in this area right now. And so we kind of have taken over a little bit of the school site here. But this kind of gives you just a rough idea of the scale of a classroom, and then kind of the scale of what that park is. I believe the property line was, I think those other portables are about here. So I did lay it out, and I was able to actually get all the portables into, using that space. What we did is to kind of relay it out to try to get the restrooms as close as possible over here. So they're just closer to utilities, so we don't have to run water and sewer, too far away. So does that help a little bit?
Yeah, it helps a little bit. I'm just not recalling the space being big enough to take that much, but maybe I'm just not seeing it properly. Does anyone else have questions?
Yeah, no, I don't have a question, but for at this stage, it sounds like an agreeable, solid plan in several respects. The Norwood site, I mean, that's ideal. And that little park area over there, I've raised that issue before. That's really and I asked for the neighbors over there. I've had complaints from neighbors over there, so that would temporarily resolve something. But maybe that temporary might also evolve into something permanent after the Norwood site's developed. I don't know, but I mean, I know this is the beginning, but I think it's not a sound idea, and I think I can speak for most of us. I think we're anxious to get this thing up and running.
Thanks for that area shot. That provides a bit more.
Yeah, here's the 3 portables that are there now that are like right in this area. And I'd agree. I mean, when Harinder and I first walked it, just walking, and I was going, I don't know that you'll be able to get, what you want to in there. But as I started to lay them out, and, yeah, as a permanent location, it feels pretty tight, but, for a couple years as the other gets up and running, I think it'll work really well. Harinder has a good relationship with the principal over there too, because I think some of the facilities, like the fields, might have to be, joint used between the middle and elementary.
And I have a question. Since this is like a phase in, we'll have the first set of 7th graders. It's not going to be to capacity the first year, like you're saying. This is like taking a couple use of this a couple 2-3 years. Not all the space will be used the first year, correct?
That's correct.
And also the portables, are you laying them all at the same time, to just let that go ahead and get grown into, or are you putting those portables in like phases or something?
Yeah, we had talked about both of those. I mean, if we're not going to if the school isn't going to use all of them that first year, then yeah, you'd be paying rent for one. So I think phasing is probably the best way to do that. And probably the most cost effective. I mean, if we know that we're going to have to put down all 12, is if there's any base or asphalt or, things like that, we would do all that together. So you're doing that once. And then the next summer, you would just have to set the portables and hook them up.
You had mentioned PG&E and power. Are you aware that we're on the SMUD grid?
No, but SMUD would be a lot better. PG&E's very difficult. I mean,
Yeah, I know.
SMUD's,
No, we're not PG&E. We are SMUD.
oh, that'd be great.
After the okay, so everything, let's say everything comes to fruition, and you know, the Norwood site is complete, and everything is going there. What would this site look like afterward, after everything is gone?
So, Mike, can I jump back in?
Yes.
Okay. So, in terms of this, again, this is just, we're just trying to find the temporary place until we can move into Norwood. That's the, you know, the last conversations we had. So in terms of the infrastructure, you know, the electrical, the water, and this is my understanding, and Enoch Young can speak more to this, but those portables are just rentals. So those would go back to the portable company that we rent those from. That's, you know, theoretically what would happen. So that space is already, you know, the groundwork and everything has been laid. So there could be potentially something more permanent, as Member Boyd said, that could be put there. Because again, we've put in the infrastructure. If I can elaborate a little further though, the challenge is not so much, you know, like this would work for us from a timeline perspective, but the challenge that we have is, one is the cost, and getting a lender to actually allow us to build. This is going to be about a $2 million project, if, you know, a little bit more than that, just to get the site work done and get the portables in place, but also the rent for the portables for a couple of years. So in our last conversation with Superintendent Reyes, you know, we talked about maybe just, you know, focusing on Norwood and not doing anything at Glenwood. However, as we talked about in that timeline, it won't be ready. Best case scenario is that it would be ready in January of 2022. So, you know, we need, the urgency that we have is that we have to get this school up and open, and we need to get something up and running. The funding side of this is a big challenge as well, and that's why I'm going to have Enoch speak next. So I'll pause there though.
Did you want me to come in now, Carpenter, or?
I just wanted to let Mr. Barnes just, see if there are more questions that we can answer up to this point.
I'm good for now. Are there any other questions?
I have none.
Okay. So, Mike, I'm just going to thank you for, you know, showing us the, you know, the layout potentially, and also just the satellite view. Again, the challenge that we have also is time, but also in terms of funding. So doing that Norwood site, that's a conversation with funders that, you know, sounds like they are interested, right? But when it comes to doing temporary facilities, funders are not very excited about that at all. So that's where, you know, we have Enoch with us, and I'm going to let Enoch talk about that and just what he's hearing from potential funders. Enoch?
Thank you. So, you know, I think what I wanted to first start off is, you know, just kind of giving people a broad overview of typically, you know, charter school financing. And I went ahead and spoke with several community development lending institutions, as well as a developer who has developed quite a few charter schools around California called Pacific Charter School Development Company. And essentially the way it typically happens is a charter school is able to start a school, whether it's in a strip mall or in a church or whatnot, and be able to grow their enrollment. And because they have this high enrollment, which they have proved out over several years, a lender will then be comfortable enough to say, you know, I see a steady stream of revenue. I am willing to lend money to you so that you could build your new facility. And that's the typical sort of formula that has occurred in the charter school world. We, however, are in sort of a different, unique situation in which we have this relationship with Robla, in which we've been working very closely together. And when I had really shared with the different lenders as well as this developer, about our relationship and kind of what we were proposing, that was something that was very positive in their perspective. And so typically a lender or a developer wouldn't really even speak with us at this stage because it's so early in the process. But because there is this relationship that does exist, it certainly allowed them to kind of think critically with us and kind of help us to kind of think about the structure of how this could get funded. So that being said, what would happen in terms of how the financing typically gets structured is, for now, we only have just a round ballpark figure for the school. So let's just say the permanent facility costs about $5 to $7 million to build. A funder will essentially put in about 80% of what it costs to build the project. So let's take just a round figure for now, $5 million for the project. We as sort of the developer would need to kind of provide a gap of 1 million, but in order to kind of pay for that, there's usually a gap of that somehow the borrower, the school, is contributing to that, and then the bank or the lender pays 80% of that. And that's usually kind of what I would call sort of like the construction phase, to kind of get that project built. And once that is completed, and that funding usually is somewhat of a short-term phase of 3 to 5 years, and then they expect to get paid back. But once that has been completed, a permanent lender comes in place to take out that construction loan and really put on long-term financing, in which the mortgage is essentially a lot more affordable over a long-term period, really just providing a solid financial base for the school to continuously operate for the long-term future. So that's sort of kind of in a big picture nutshell of how charter school financing structure works. That said, a lender is going to want to be able to put money into a property that they know that they're going to get return on, and so and get paid back on. And so this is kind of why, when we went through that iteration of the initial idea was, do a temporary site at Glenwood, put in the infrastructure, which is probably going to cost like about $1 million to $2 million, right? Build in the temporary site and then move to Norwood. What we saw there was like, well, what lender is going to want to put in $2 million into something that ultimately is not going to translate into a return, right? A payback for them. And so I think that where we were kind of really kind of working through as an idea is, if we did a temporary facility at Glenwood, but at the same time eventually putting the permanent facility at Glenwood, that would solve the kind of proverbial question of the lender, like, how is this all going to get paid back? And so I think that while I think Mike had said that while it is tight, it's still possible to do a school there. That would be one way of making sure that the financing kind of makes sense, right? We're paying for the infrastructure and the school facility, and a lender can wrap their mind around something like that. So that's, assuming we're willing to use sort of this traditional financing model, that would be sort of what we would do. Now, the other model that we've talked about, and we were in the prior meeting with Emilio and Ruben, and we had those discussions, if we were to put in, infrastructure into the Glenwood site, do the temporary facility, and then kind of work on building the permanent facility, well, eventually these portables will be removed out of the way, but you'll have some additional infrastructure in the ground at that site. So that could be done for used later for some other purpose, but it would essentially kind of represent, in my mind, a sunk cost. And so those are kind of the challenges, if you will, of just how do we make efficient use of the financial resources that we have at our disposal. So I'll maybe just stop there and see if anyone has any questions.
Yeah, Craig DeLuz. So I guess my question is it just sounds like, one, if there, I just don't know if there's really enough space, whatever you want to call it, available to have basically 2 schools there on the Glenwood site. That's my question number one. My other question is as you were talking about the temporary facility at Glenwood and then doing the permanent facility at Norwood, I was thinking exactly what you eventually wound up saying, which was that just sounds like a big cost, a big investment that is then just basically going to be left there. How's that? One, what's the cost going to be? And two, it just seems like it's how is that going to be financed? I guess my question is, I'm assuming then you've looked, there are no real facilities within the boundaries of the district that even on a temporary basis you could utilize for the school site. One, if that's the case, have you looked anywhere adjacent to the school district? Once again, because we're talking about a temporary site, if we're going to be building out Norwood, have you looked to see if there are any facilities adjacent to the district or near the district, even if they're outside of our boundaries, that could work for a temporary facility at a much cheaper cost?
Yep.
Yeah.
We started investigating that. I know that Harinder kind of worked with a real estate agent to kind of examine spaces within the Robla boundaries. I don't think there was really anything that we felt that could really house, that number of students in one place. I know that we've explored possibly doing some sort of scattered site model at the different elementary school sites, but that didn't really seem to be a viable option given the fact that there was a lot of other kind of upgrades that were going on in each of the respective campuses. So that did not seem like a viable option after kind of discussing that internally. We have not researched extensively outside of the boundaries because I think in our mind, our goal was to kind of be within, proximate distance with all the families. Harinder, I'm not sure. Am I kind of describing that accurately as far as kind of research efforts for other facilities?
Yes, you're right. So we've looked, Member DeLuz, at commercial properties within the boundaries. The other issue is that if we go and start up even just temporarily our school outside of the Robla boundaries into another school district's boundaries, then we have to go to their board and seek their permission, and that's not always, that's not always easy to do. Most districts are very opposed to having a school authorized by one district come into their boundaries. So there's that. And from a legal,
was there a recent change in charter law that there was a recent change in charter law that would require you to get their permission?
Correct. I believe it's both AB 1505 and SB 98 that brings those two together. So yeah, so that, I mean, great. There are properties outside of the boundaries, no doubt. And there's some that I think would not require a lot of tenant improvements for us to do that. And we're perfectly, open to doing that in terms of commercial property, like Enoch said.
What about properties within the district if you were to go with a lesser enrollment initially until we had the new site open?
That's definitely an option as well. Even if we start smaller, I think it's important for us, that urgency that we have is just to start. And so that's definitely a possibility. So any guidance, any, way that you all know the community a lot better than we do. We've been looking from, a commercial realtor perspective, and we don't know the community yet the way you all know. So if there's any way that you all can, guide us, then we would definitely be open to exploring that.
Are there any other comments or questions?
I would
Go ahead.
Sorry. I was just going to say that, you know, obviously this is not any decision-making item on the agenda tonight. We wanted to provide an update to the board about kind of where things are, and we wanted to present this concept. Well, kind of two concepts, right? The Glenwood concept, but we see the flaws in that idea, and then just, you know, I guess I want to ask very specifically to the board. Is that a concept that you feel that we can continue to explore, the idea of using the Norwood land as a possible location for this site? Now, there's a lot to do in order to see if that's really a feasible option, but we didn't want to proceed very far, and this is the caution that I gave to our partners, to Enoch and to Harinder, right? That I don't want to get too far into this before I get, you know, I need to get the board in on this discussion and see kind of where they are with this as an idea. And then if we get, you know, just some general, yeah, we're willing to explore that, then we can explore it further. Or, you know, if there is some unexpressed desire that one of you has that you've never told me about for the use of that land, then this may be the time to reveal that to me as well.
I love the idea.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea. I really do. I have a question. Just the other day, driving around that curve, I see there's a cyclone fence. Is that whole property not ours up to? It stops that fence.
I haven't seen the fence, Mr. Boyd, but that whole empty lot is not ours. The back section, the section that's furthest away from Norwood, does not belong to us.
So that's probably who put the fence up.
Possibly.
Okay. All right. Okay. But I think it's worth exploring for sure. I don't even see a negative to it right now. I mean, cost and getting it financed, yes, but I mean, as far as what it could bring. I'm sorry, and I'll mute at that.
That's pandemic meetings, so don't worry about that. I don't have any objections to proceeding either. I was thinking more along the lines of you know, because what Trustee Lewis mentioned was right about the expense. But what I was thinking about going back to the Glenwood temporary one was if we could think, you know, a little bit further ahead on how we would possibly use that land or that site afterward, and maybe we could do some kind of I don't know how I'm formulating this correctly, but future prep while we're prepping for the temporary site, and kind of do two things at once, so we can possibly think about down the road how we would you know, further expand.
There's only one.
I'm sorry, what was that?
She wasn't helping you.
Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah. So yeah, I was just thinking, you know, if we could think a little bit further ahead on how we could prepare that land and possibly use it in the future, so that we don't have to go in and do a lot of prep afterward. You know, I would just love to see some kind of development in that. Either way, whichever way, you know, we go. But that's what I was thinking about that particular Glenwood site. Anyone else?
I have a couple of questions, or one main question. Enoch, you were saying that the investors, of course, would be more interested in a temporary, in a permanent site, because they have to recoup somehow on their investment. Would you explain to me exactly how the investors will recoup on a, you know, something like a school, which is a, you know, not-for-profit, you know, entity? Would you explain it for me, please?
Yeah, so the way the lenders look at this, when they're underwriting a school, they're basically looking at the net operating income of the school. So, you know, a school is going to get revenue based on the number of students that they're going to get, right? and then they've got to pay for their expenses, and there's usually some type of leftover dollars, right? And so those leftover dollars is what's going to pay for the mortgage. And so we're essentially talking about, well, how can we get a mortgage basically to pay for the school. Does that, I don't know if I answered your question in that way, but that's how the lenders are looking at it.
You're saying like, it's kind of like your house. We're saying until you borrow the money for the house, and then you pay that mortgage, you're paying it to the bank that's giving you the money or invested in it. And so they're expecting you to be able to have income that'll allow you to handle your business that you have, but then pay them for
That's correct.
giving you the money. So it's kind of the way that the school, but it's based off of more you getting that revenue from the ADA, from the students, the enrollment that comes in there.
That's correct.
Keep controlling your costs so you can make sure to pay them back, kind of.
That's correct. That's
okay.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
So my next question is there anywhere inside of Robla that we already have a structure that you can, possibly rent temporarily, that's already got some things laid, and you're just paying for that space, and then planning the permanent site? Is there any place in Robla that could even possibly suit it? Because I know about small. Okay, we want the children, they're middle school, we want them they're big, you want them to have room, you want them to be able to have amenities that allow them to just do regular school. But when you're starting something from the beginning, it's going to be pretty rudimentary, right? And so and often not as roomy as you wish. So is there anything that's already out there?
Yeah, Harinder actually explored that concept, because we were looking at, well, what if we, at least temporarily looked at all the different school sites within Robla, and maybe there was an extra portable here and one site, or another portable here, or a classroom here that was not being utilized. And so I think that the discussions that we had were that because of kind of what's going on with the upgrades and whatnot, and kind of some things are being reused or repurposed, that there wasn't going to be enough available classrooms, which is why we were kind of looking at this model. Harinder, am I correct? Is that a accurate?
Well, actually, I'm going to intervene here because I feel like this is a question I should answer.
Sure.
As the person who has the knowledge about the space.
Yeah.
Right.
I also want to make sure, I'm going to let you 1 second, Ruben, but I think this is going off the way that I didn't answer. I wasn't talking about excess school structure. I'm talking about a completely different building that's already up, that was totally something else, and can be rented. That's where you can go ahead and
are you saying on one of our campuses? On one of our campuses? No,
not on one of our campuses. Just like I said, just a building, like we were saying, like a strip mall before, being used for one that's empty. You rent it and use it for a while until that's what I was talking about.
Okay, so if we're not talking about our campus, then yes, that is the exploration that Harinder did.
Yeah. So to your question, Member Howard, you're absolutely right. So we explored that, and we're still exploring that. The only building that we've seen that is for sale or for rent is on the corner of Jesse Avenue and Norwood Avenue. I think it's an old Walgreens. But we haven't heard anything back from the owner, and we've been trying to reach them for weeks. Our realtor has. So that's one. And then we're open to, if there's existing structures that, like churches. So we've spoken to 2 or 3 of the churches in the area as well. There's a church that's nearby, just down the road from the district office. And I believe they're called Leadership is the name of the church. And don't quote me on that. But we've spoken to the pastor there, and they have some space. And usually churches aren't, operating, using that space a whole lot during the week. So we're open to that, but what we would love is any guidance that you all can provide, and any connection that we can have, so we can go and talk to people around using commercial space or space that's already up, like you said, where we could do with minimum, renovations and just get in there and go to work.
Yeah, I've been racking my brain since you started this conversation, trying to think of a spot. But and going back to what Craig said about lower enrollment, I still tend to favor using Glenwood campus again for the community's sake over there, and not only just improving it, but it would also advertise, show what we're doing. Catering to the wishes of the community, and they'll see it. And then, of course, the word will spread, that it's going to be going towards a more permanent site. So it's just kind of where I'm at.
Yeah, thank you. If there are any other, we apologize for taking so much of your time on this item, but thank you for letting us just share these, just where we're at right now, just very open, honest, just conversation around this. And we need your leadership, we need your wisdom in order for us to really be able to move forward thoughtfully. So we appreciate that. Superintendent Reyes, can I throw out one more item and not related to the facility? This
Sure.
is just, we need help. So one of the things in our charter petition in terms of the governance of this school is that we currently have, we will basically have a 3-member board to start with. Well, we have 2 members, and we need one of you. That was one of our things that we wanted to have, was we wanted to have one of our Robla School District board members join our board. So you don't have to fight over that tonight. I'm just reminding you all that we would be honored to have one of you and sit on our board so that we can have even more collaboration specific to the school, not just on the facilities, but all aspects of the school, and having you all then be able to report back to your colleagues on the board here. So I would just ask that you all, future business perhaps, bring that into your discussion as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions or comments or concerns before we move on? And it sounds like you have enough to go off of for now.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we really were just looking for the board's blessing to continue this exploration, and it feels very much that we have that.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Pagani and Mr. Okay, moving on to our next presentation. We have our CFW facilities update with Emilio Flores and Jordan Miles from CFW.
Good evening, folks. We will try to be brief, as I think you're a little overloaded on facilities today, but I will.
Emilio, we can barely hear you.
Sure, 1 second.
Or at least I can. I don't know about anyone else.
Same here.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
No, now it's worse.
Yeah, your mic's off.
How's that?
There you go.
Yeah, well, your mic's on. It's still a little muffled though. But if that's what we have, then we'll go with that.
I'll speak up as best as I can. How's that?
Mm-hmm. Okay.
My graphics are a little more simplified than Mr. Rath's, but just give you overall progress where we are, and to give you a bit of a soothing picture of construction while we're at it. Over at Robla Elementary, we are under construction. As you can see, we've completed a lot of the site grading, and we've moved into foundation work. Rebar work is occurring this week, and we hope to actually lay the foundation and the slab on grade concrete work by Thanksgiving. So you will see the actual footprint of the new two-story building in place by the time we get back from Thanksgiving break. barring any weather conditions that we may have overall. Over at Bell Avenue, we have received DSA approval. We are continuing to negotiate with the builder regarding the GMP, the guaranteed maximum price for that project. And we hope to come back to you in November regarding that as well. We've also submitted the CDE applications and awaiting CDE approval for the kindergarten project over there as well. And we're hoping to have that in early December at the latest. Over in Glenwood, which is an area that we had spoken about previously and was a bit of a topic in our discussion today, we are looking at coming out of DSA by the end of the year. And we are hoping to continue to look at improvements over there. Just as a reminder to the board, in the original plan for Glenwood, there has been a design contemplated for improvements to the park or to the current park. So that is something that's currently included in the design set that has been submitted to DSA. We are working with the city of Sacramento to resolve some outstanding issues regarding stormwater treatment. There are a number of new standards regarding wastewater treatment and stormwater treatment that we are hoping to resolve with the city to move forward with that project as well. Looking forward to what we have, we are continuing to monitor the construction at Robla. We are coordinating with the district regarding the overall need to have a plan in place for when students do return. I do know that's something that's on your agenda for later today, but that is something that we're continuing to work with the site principal as well as district staff on what we're going to be doing over there as well. The other thing we're working on is working on the transition from the admin space over in the new admin complex, Building A, where the boardroom will eventually be. And we are working to coordinate the transition from that space over into the Robla Elementary campus. We have a site walk tomorrow to talk about some of those spaces in between and to resolve some of the conflicts we have in terms of space use and so forth, as well as looking at the overall site security to address hopefully cleaning up some of those multiple gates and fences that we have at the Robla Elementary School site. Over at Bell Avenue, as I mentioned, we are going to, you'll see a number of items coming to the board in November. We'll be selecting an inspector of record. That's the person who is in charge of making sure that what is on the plans is actually what gets built, as well as the CDE applications coming back to us for the kindergarten projects. We have already received CDE approval for the 2-story classroom building over at Bell Avenue, and we are working with the district on the timing of when construction will start. As the board may recall, the 6 portables that sit in the footprint of the new 2-story classroom building have already been vacated. And so in terms of mobilization over there, we're continuing to coordinate that as well. And just briefly touching upon additional space at sites, we just as a reminder to the board, we are still utilizing Main Avenue as a temporary interim housing for students at Robla and at Bell once we commence construction. But overall, folks, I do want to acknowledge the board and its hard work and vision in getting these projects underway. Without you and without the leadership of the district, and having the foresight to have us go out there and do that 2/3 bond, this would not have been made possible. So just wanted to take a moment to thank all of you for that and the opportunity to continue to work with you. But really, this is transformative work that we're doing. And hopefully when we are done in a few years with all the projects, the additional projects beyond this, we will be able to look back at this fondly. So we will be coming back to you in November with some items. And then looking towards the new year, we hope to discuss the next phase of projects, which would be pertaining to some of the improvements at the other sites, Taylor and Maine as well. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have, any curiosity you may have about the construction project that we have undergoing right now. But otherwise, we continue to work with the district on getting these projects moving forward. And as the folks at New Hope had mentioned, the district has also asked us to weigh in from time to time regarding potential siting and other facilities ideas over there as well.
Thank you, Emilio. Are there questions? or comments?
I have none.
Okay.
I have one. I think it's a repeat. Would you say again? You said that the district is already in talks about where to relocate the scholars, the students, whenever they come back to school, because work, of course, will still be going on. I didn't quite heard what you said about around that.
Superintendent Reyes may want to jump in here as well, but my understanding is at the beginning of the year, we knew that we would be impacting a number of students that were housed in the old Robla Elementary School building. And arrangements were made for that cohort to be relocated. Relocated sounds kind of odd saying we're in distance learning, but to be associated with the main Avenue campus, similar to what we did with the Taylor students when we did the modernization project a couple of years ago. In addition to that, and once again, Superintendent Reyes, please correct me if I'm wrong, there's also going to be a cohort of Bell students that will also be over at Main Avenue as we have vacated those 6 portables that were over next to the parking lot. And so as construction commences at Bell Avenue, those students will also be located. And I believe in both cases, arrangements were made at the beginning of the year. So we're not looking at a transition mid-year, and we're not looking at a transition overall. Superintendent Reyes, please correct me if I'm mistaken.
No, you're correct. You're correct, Mr. Flores. The plan was carried out as if students were coming back to school in August. Interestingly, back in June, that actually we were under the impression that was going to be the case. So all of the students all of the teachers who needed to move to Maine, all of their boxes have already been moved to Maine. All of those students already know that they will be attending Maine. Those are students from Bell and Robla. And so when the time comes and we are able to reopen our schools, everybody knows where they're supposed to go, and they all have a space.
Okay. Any other? I can't see everyone, so if you have questions or comments, please speak up. Much better view. Are there any other questions or comments? Okay. Thank you very much, Emilio.
Thank you, folks. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Okay. Our next item is the Teacher Professional Growth Project with Crystal Saladin and Crystal. Is Crystal here?
I am here. Good evening. Hi, everyone. It seems that my internet might be a little unstable, so I'm going to share my my face with you for a few minutes, but if the audio starts to cut out, let me know and I will take that away so that we will have a more stable environment. So with that, I'm going to share my screen with you and give you an update on our Robla Teacher Professional Growth System. Are we okay? Somebody give me a thumbs up that you can see that. All right. So just by way of review, I want to remind you that our professional growth system is a 3-tiered system. All certificated employees participate in that left-hand side, the professional growth review cycle, and they participate at the following increments. The probationary, temporary, and intern practitioners participate every year until they become permanent. And then permanent employees that have been with Robla 3 to 9 years participate every other year. And permanent employees that have been with Robla 10 years or more participate every 3 years. We do have an intervention opportunity that we call advisory, where we provide high quality supports for any practitioners that may be struggling within our professional growth system. And our timeline allows for 2 30-day cycles of intervention where they work closely with an advisor. If that intervention is not enough, then we move to our top level, which is called peer assistance and review, or commonly referred to as PAR, where practitioners are referred to participate in this program when they result in a summative rating. So that's at the end of their review cycle. They have a rating of provides no evidence. So in other words, what this means is after 2 or 3 observations, if we are seeing absolutely no movement, that they're still at that level where they're providing no evidence of improvement, they can be referred to PAR. And then, as you're probably well aware, many aspects of PAR then are regulated by Ed Code. So also a review is that we have a multidimensional approach to our professional growth. What you're seeing right now are 3 examples that are similar and yet very customized. So our largest group is obviously the classroom teachers, EL specialists, enrichment teachers, intervention specialists, and RSP teachers. That was our initial group that we designed for. And then from there, we moved out and created something similar, but customized for preschool teachers that centered around the class tool that they use within their instruction there. And then on to special day class teachers. As I said, these are all similar in that there are direct instruction observations that occur. There are areas that they will choose to focus their professional growth. For example, with the special day class teachers, as well as the delivery instruction, they would choose from one of the 3 domains listed there, which would, in essence, take a look at their special edness, if you will, that is particular to their job assignment. All 3 of these do participate in a self-reflective survey that's called the Professional Culture Teacher Rubric, where they self-assess themselves as an educator. And then our classroom teachers and special day class teachers also participate in the SOAR Knowledge Use Survey, which is another self-reflective survey that looks at how much they know about our SOAR frames and how much they're using them. 4 more examples here are speech and language pathologist, school psychologist, school social worker, and school nurse. And I grouped these on a different slide for a specific reason. They are different from our classroom instruction. Obviously, these are usually operating outside of a classroom. And so we needed to make it much more customized for them. It's the same sort of design in that they have an assigned area that they will have to focus on. For instance, the school nurse would focus on delivery of service. However, the school nurse could then choose or will choose one of the other 3s: medical knowledge, classroom environment, professional responsibilities, and knowledge of health mandates. And this allows us to customize it to whatever their needs are for professional growth. Also notice that the percentages are different in each case. Obviously, they all add up to 100%, but we wanted to, again, just allow a customization for them. Well, with the school closure in March, obviously, we had to quickly make some adjustments. And with the agreement of RTA, the agreement that we came to for closing out last year's review cycle is as such. Our permanent practitioners that were assigned to their site administrator with at least 1 observation complete then had the option to accept that score as their highest observation score and close out the review cycle. So normally they would have had the opportunity to have 2 or 3 observations, and then that highest score would be the one used for their rating. However, in this case, we said that you have the option of having just that 1 observation count. And in 22 cases, we had permanent practitioners that chose to do that and close out the review cycle. Then we had the other group of permanent practitioners that were assigned to work with me as the peer facilitator, and they had at least 1 observation complete. We met virtually together, myself, the teacher practitioner, and the site administrator. We had a triad meeting to discuss closing out the review cycle. And in both of those cases, the site administrator agreed that we could take the observation that had been completed and that score. So both of those were then closed out. We had our probationary practitioners that had 1 observation complete. We just closed the review cycle out and they were to accept that score. And that occurred in 24 different cases. And then the last one was if no observations had been completed for a probationary practitioner, they were rolled back into the review cycle for this year. So they are right now participating, and that was in 2 instances that we had teachers that had nothing completed. And then with the beginning of this school year, again, we had to come to agreement with RTA and make some changes due to COVID-19. And so for this year, the agreement was that permanent certificated employees would be reviewed only if they volunteered. And if they volunteered, they were assigned to work with me, the peer facilitator. Probationary certificated employees were assigned to their site administrator, as they always are. And all participants then had the option of beginning their evaluation during distant learning only model or the transition learning model. Excuse me. So with that, this year we have 23 probationary participants and 3 permanent volunteers. So that's a total of 26 participating this year in the review cycle. That became problematic for us because with our 5-year projection of rolling everyone back into the certificated system, we then had a sort of domino effect. So looking at this graph, you'll see the school years in the top row, and in the bottom row, you'll see the originally proposed number of participants that would then allow us to complete this by 22-23. Obviously, we can't do that now, because this year we were supposed to have 62 participants and we only have 26. So that meant that the 36 that did not choose to participate this year were rolled into next year, 21-22. Well, then that became a huge group that we would not be able to accommodate with caseloads for facilitators. And so Nicole and I met and developed a plan whereby, again, the domino effect happened. So in 21-22, we then moved anyone who was scheduled and was what we call a track 3. That's our 10 years or above experience. And we moved those teachers out 1 more year for their review. And when we got to 22-23, of course, we had too many again. And so in that year, we just moved the teachers that had originally piloted the program. So in essence, we are going to be a year longer enrolling everyone back into the system. It won't be till 23-24. However, important to note that the teachers that are on that outside edge are the ones that piloted. We actually will have all certificated employees rolled into the system by 22-23, which had been our original projection. So it just took a little wiggling and moving some people around to allow that to happen. We have always asked for feedback from our participants ever since the beginning of the pilot, and we continue to do that. And so every year there have been changes made due to that feedback. This year, the improvements that have been made are that I created a multi-level orientations that were grouped by specific evaluation types. So what I'm saying is that originally, everyone, so imagine 60 plus people, would get together for the orientation that would last about 2.5 hours. And the feedback that I was getting was, preschool teachers were saying, I'm really confused. What part am I supposed to do? And social workers were saying, but only a little bit of that pertained to me. So with that in mind, I created orientation groups in 3 different categories. So the preschool teachers have their own orientation that is specific to them. And then there is an orientation that is for the social workers, psychologists, speech and language therapists, and the school nurse. All of those people that I pointed out were outside of the classroom. And then our large group of classroom teachers, enrichment, etc. And then from there, within those 3 groups, I created 2 levels. So we have the beginning level of someone just rolling into the system and really knows nothing about it. That's my level 1. Their orientation obviously is quite a bit longer. And then a level 2 is someone who is returning. So this year, I had probationary employees that had participated last year and were completing their 2nd year. they obviously did not need to sit through a 2-hour orientation. So that's where the thought came that I developed an orientation for the returning people that's really about 45 minutes to an hour long, that just goes through procedures and routines and makes it a lot quicker for them. And this year, the feedback was very good. Everyone seemed very happy that they had something specific to their needs. The next accomplishment was the SOAR Knowledge Use Survey that we ask our classroom teachers, SDC teachers. We ask them to take this self-reflective survey about how much do they know and how much do they use the SOAR frames. And it became evident over the last 2 years, I would say, that it really didn't fit for art and PE and technology teachers. And in fact, they were scoring possibly 6 points lower than anyone else because of the 2 questions that they really couldn't honestly answer based on their assignment. And so what I've done now is in their version of the SOAR Knowledge Use Survey, it's been customized so that art teachers, oh, excuse me, let me back up and tell you that the question was, how do they provide opportunities for students to produce and fortify written language? So obviously that was really difficult, especially for like a PE teacher to answer. Art was trying to make it happen, and technology was, you know, on the edge there of saying, well, can I count the, you know, on a device? And so anyway, it just became evident that we needed to make something a little more customized for that. And so in fact, now our teachers are asked to reflect on how to provide opportunities for students to create, present, respond, or connect to a piece of artwork. PE teachers are asked to reflect on how to provide opportunities for students to demonstrate motor skills and movement patterns needed to perform a variety of physical activities. And technology teachers are asked to reflect on how to provide opportunities for students to choose the appropriate platform, create original works, visually communicate complex ideas, or publish context. So I'm confident that they will then be able to take the survey and fully reflect based on their job assignment, but we'll get feedback at the end of this year and see how that goes. The next change that was made this year was I created a detailed explanation of how the professional growth matrix creates their overall scores. So that growth matrix is the end document that they see at the end of their review cycle. They're asked to sign it, their site administrator signs it, it's forwarded on to human resources and placed in their personnel file. And as you can imagine, thinking back to those multidimensional approaches with percentages being different in different areas. And then in some cases, those percentages are even weighted heavier than others. Think observations. Those are weighted more heavily than a self-reflective survey. It became kind of muddled, and a lot of people were saying, I just really don't understand how this score came about. So I now have detailed explanations that I can share. They can see them, but I have also told them that I'm willing to, explain it to anyone who would like to have that explanation. And then the last change this year was, this came about because of all of us being in remote locations and not always on site, but all of the information for the professional growth system is now on a Google Shared Drive, as well as in the participants' binders. So for the last 2 years, they've had a binder with all of this information in it, but I've had multiple situations where they hadn't gotten to the school to get their binder, or it was in fact packed. So it became evident pretty quickly that we needed to create something else. And so the Google Shared Drive came about, and now everyone can access it at any time. We will continue to ask for feedback from our participants and our facilitators. And as always, we strive to create a system that's meaningful and helps our employees grow professionally. And with that is all I have for you this year.
Thank you.
You know, I really appreciate the format you used when I was looking through that. I was giving credit to Shari by mistake, but anyways, I just want to say it, it it was so clear and easy to read, and I really do appreciate it. And I said it was 21st century, but going back to the presentation, I really appreciate the fact that there is a sound structure to let our teachers know where they're headed, what's expected of them, you know, instead of just thrusting them into the barrel and, you know, and find out for themselves. I just really commend what you've done.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Well, no other questions. Then. Thank you very much.
I don't have any questions. I just have a comment. I have, you know, multiple screens going here. So I'm playing around on one. I'm like, oh, wait a minute. The cursor's moving the other screen. So it's taking me a bit to unmute. So forgive me. But anyway, I also wanted to say that I think that it's very it's very good. That's the only word I can think of right now. That this seems to be not a fluid process, but it is kind of living because you're taking that feedback, very evident from the staff, to try and make this as applicable and actionable as possible in order to actually help them grow in the areas that they wish to grow. And so that's that's really good, because this is already, you've got a multi-tiered process, which I think is, like, again, applicable to all the different positions. You know, we have the arts and, our elective teachers, they're not the same as the classroom teachers. And, and sometimes they feel left out and not counted because they're looking at something that isn't totally usable for them. So it definitely encourages people to get involved in the process when they see something that is being that they're being listened to, and that things are being developed in such a way that it's applicable to them, it's usable to help them grow their craft. So I think that is very palpable here, and just good ears to the ground.
Thank you.
These are the kind of things that make me proud to be a board member in Robla, to see how much thought and preparation goes into this. And, this is the stuff that the public doesn't really see, or so, but it's just, it's really nice to see the level of detail and thought that goes into this. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Okay, thank you very much. Moving on to our final presentation of the evening, which is PBIS Bullying Prevention by Sandy Graham, Anjum Khan, and Linda Schlesinger.
Hello, everyone.
Hi.
And we have a PowerPoint here to show, and I'm just going to introduce our presentation tonight, and Anjum and Linda are going to be co-presenting the content of the presentation. And so we wanted to highlight some of the work that we have done in our positive behavior intervention supports, or what we call PBIS. We have all been working very hard to keep PBIS at the forefront of what we do, because we all know the importance of promoting positive, safe school environments where teachers and students have trusting and respectful relationships. So we are entering our 6th year of PBIS implementation. And this year, with school closures, it has thrown us into a bit of a loop. However, we have not skipped a beat, and we are working hard to keep PBIS alive and relevant even in distance learning. Our PBIS work has been guided and supported through our coordinators of school climate, or our CSCs as we call them. And with the loss of one of our CSCs this year, we have reorganized our PBIS endeavors into a more district-wide approach where our two CSCs, Linda Schlesinger and Anjum Khan, can provide more universal PBIS supports, but still provide each school with individual guidance that is unique to individual school sites. So with that said, I'm going to turn it over to Linda and Anjum, and we'll start our presentation.
Thank you, Sandy. Good evening, everyone. It's great to be here and have an opportunity to talk with you a little bit about positive school climate and PBIS. Anjum and I had collected some data and talked with the principals to evaluate where schools currently are with their PBIS after going through the distant learning piece and then looking forward to a hybrid model. And so some of the things that we see is that administrators are still leading, taking the lead in PBIS and school climate. There's a strong staff to parent connection, and we want to make sure that that stays in place from teachers to front office staff to attendance clerks. And this just gives you an idea of a visual of the framework of PBIS. PBIS, which means positive behavior interventions and supports, is a district multi-tiered framework to support school-wide social and emotional behavior that's also integrated with academics as we look at the whole student. This little graphic of a bike just shows how integral every piece is across the school and across the district to the success of PBIS. All parts are crucial as we move forward with positive school climate, everyone doing their part. From the behavior expectations to positive proactive language and a consistent discipline process. So you'll see that school teams are really on the seat. They're the seat of the bike, and the school principal is critical to implementation. The CSCs, the coordinators steer the process, and then of course the data tells us where we're going. And as Sandy mentioned, we're taking a more global perspective with two coordinators to support 6 school sites. We've taken this global perspective, and Jim and I team to support the district, and we're able to give consistency. We have complementary skills and experiences, and the schools benefit with shared ideas and experiences and more resources. So we identified what the school needs were in our meetings with principals, and they have a positive school. They have PBIS Tier 1 and Tier 2 teams. Most of the schools have their teams still meeting on a monthly basis, and they've asked for us to continue strengthening those teams and to really empower them to spread and strengthen PBIS across the schools. We've also been looking at PBIS at home training. We'll talk a little bit more about that. And then PBIS 101 training for new teachers and staff. It's been, about 4 years since our staff has received PBIS training. So Anjum and I will be doing some of that training ourselves. They all have a referral system with the school-wide information system and making sure that we have accurate data. We'll be also working on some training for that, and then monitoring the integrity of PBIS and our positive school climate. So now in our 6th year of integrating PBIS, let's look at how PBIS looks today and what our plan is for the future. In some capacity, our schools have been involved with these key PBIS elements that you see here on the screen. We're also seeing evidence of these elements in distance learning as well. The teachers have been teaching specific positive behavior expectations. There are, for the most part, there are classroom and school-wide recognition and referral systems. Right at this moment, we're not using Swiss data for discipline, just because it's really difficult to do that in a remote setting. But the teachers and principals have been in very close contact with the parents. So any kind of behavior issues have been handled quickly and with good communication with the parents. And then we're working on resources and training for staff, families, and administration. So the universal PBIS team is what we call our Tier 1 team. We work with principals to build, revamp, and strengthen these teams who are or will be meeting once a month. This team works on school-wide strategies at the Tier 1 level that support 80 to 85% of our students. So this team includes the principal, certificate and classified staff, parents, and specialists as needed. And we work on reinforcing consistent positive teaching of behavior expectations, recognition systems for when students, staff, and administrators are demonstrating the expectations. The SWISH data drives our decisions at these meetings. We look at what do the behaviors, what is the data showing us in terms of behaviors, the location, the motivation behind students having behavior challenges. We do regular self-assessments and fidelity checks, and then the team frequently updates staff at the staff meetings. The Tier 2 team, which in most schools is now called the MTSS team, MTSS Tier 2 team, this is also a multidisciplinary team. And all schools have had this team in place. Anjum and I are working with the principals to strengthen their Tier 2 teams, and we're currently attending the team meetings. This group has resources and support for students who need Tier 2 academic, social, and emotional behavior interventions and supports. We'll also be providing training as we prepare for the students to return to school. We use a variety of data, academic, school-wide information system data, and attendance to guide our decisions on this team. Again, we do self-assessments and fidelity checks, and the Tier 2 teams report back to the staff at their staff meetings. So Anjum and I are planning on our first PBIS at home workshop. It will be starting with Glenwood. And this is a parent engagement PBIS at home workshop, and we're planning to provide this for all of the schools, teaching positive behavior support language and philosophy, and assisting with at-home expectations, schedules, and resources that complement their school expectations and schedules. We focus on relational building between families and schools, and our district-wide goal is greater engagement with families through the lens of positive behavior and reinforcement. This is an example right here of, on the left side, a daily distance learning student chart that I developed in collaboration for one student with the parent and the teacher. A lot of parents are struggling with, a lot of parents are struggling with how they can keep their kids on track with schedules and behavior expectations at home. And so between the teacher and the parent, we were able to come up with a plan that is consistent with what they experience at school. And then the behavior expectations are consistent that the parent uses and that the teacher uses. And so far it seems to be working well. She's using our positive, proactive language and providing reinforcements for positive behaviors. Also, the teacher calls this young man every Wednesday morning. The mom and the teacher have talked about how things are going in the classroom. And then she can do shout outs and give him positives for the good work that he's doing. And then over here on the right side are also positive-based rules for at home. This can be used for distance learning as well as just during a regular school year. Anjum.
All right, thank you, Linda Kate. And Linda Kate, I'll just let you know when I'm ready to advance the slide.
Okay.
So thank you, members of the board, Superintendent Reyes, pleasure to be here. When we talk about fidelity of implementation, this goes back to anything we do in Robla District, that we have to make sure that what we're doing is purposeful, and that in this case, you know, we have outcomes that we want to achieve. So the as intended piece, with the extent to which critical features of PBIS are implemented as intended, these are state and national standards that are vetted in the program, vetted in the system. So we had all different types of assessments. We have school-wide evaluation tools. We had tier fidelity inventory. We have self-assessments, benchmarks of quality. Our job as coordinators are not to do the battery of assessments. Our job as coordinators is to make sure that the program is functioning with fidelity, and we're recognizing the gaps and we're addressing those gaps so we can get better. And it's all about continuous improvement. It's all about serving our kids and our community. And if there are gaps, that we need to address those gaps. And this system and what we do with PBIS is no different than anything across the district. Linda Kate, next slide. So the documentation of fidelity comes in various forms. Obviously, we want to be able to use the assessments that will yield those gap areas for us. But the biggest gaps that we need, sorry, can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay. I think I need to talk a little slower. I'm hearing an echo. So we're with tier 1, as Linda Kate had mentioned, we thought a great starting point, since we were going to a more global setting and a more global perspective, was to start with the principals and to figure out from their lens how their sites were doing with PBIS. That's exactly what we did at the start of this year, and we're continuing to do. And as Linda Kate had mentioned, even as of today, we had met with one of the tier 1 teams of the schools to just know what the beat of the school is and what the beat of the district is as far as PBIS goes. And you might be wondering, well, why don't you guys as coordinators know what's going on in the district? In our previous roles, we were dedicated to certain sites. And so we did that groundwork with principals, and you know, we might have been shared between a site or two, but we didn't get to see what the other sites were doing that we weren't assigned to. So this global perspective has allowed us to kind of open things up a little bit more and to really see where we are as an entire district. So what we're finding is, as we're going to the other school sites, that they have tier 1 and tier 2 teams. They have great members on those teams that are willing to step up and do good work, especially in this time where we're having to revamp what we're doing. We have to rethink what school even looks like. Even when we think about hybrid model and what that looks like when we come back. So it's amazing to see these members of these teams that are willing to step up and willing to say, yes, I'll be part of that. You know, I'll be part of that because it's what's in the best interest of kids. Linda Kate? So the awards that you see on the bottom, we've been part of applying for PBIS recognition every year for the last 3 years. We did not do it this past year because of COVID and schools being shuttered in March. But the past 2 years, 2018, 2019, both years, schools in the Robla district were recognized for their PBIS implementation. And one of our schools, Robla Elementary, even got gold. What you see on the left, that icon that says Community Cares, this past spring with COVID shutdown and all the things going on, the coalition decided they were going to want to recognize districts and schools that were doing good work with the community, that despite the COVID crisis, we're just still reaching out to their communities. We're connecting with kids and families. So part of what we try to do is to recognize our Robla family through the lens of Glenwood. And so we wanted to basically in that application let the coalition know that we had dedicated staff members who had to switch roles. Like they were noon duties one day and they woke up the next day and said, hey, we want to be part of the Meals on Wheels program. We want to reach out to our kids in our community. And just said, hey, let's go. And we're on that train of, getting out to the community, handing out meals, doing all that stuff. The coalition saw that and recognized it. Now, we didn't make a big fuss about it. We didn't, say, hey, look at us, we're great over here. But that recognition in itself was a little bit of indication that the work that Robla does and the work that our staff members and community and volunteers do, it's in the right place. And, and that's an indication of that. So we'll get back to this recognition. Linda, Kate, and I will do what we need to do as far as the recognition program goes, with making sure that each of the school sites, are going through the sets and the assessment tools to be eligible for the recognition. And, we're certain that we are going to be able to pick up right where we left off in 2019. Linda, Kate, go ahead. So just like with anything else, data is a centerpiece of what we do. I just want to take a quick second and explain what this data is. This is from our system, from the PBIS app suite, and this is Swiss data, school-wide information systems data. And what this is this is just an example of some of the data we can pull out from this system that allows us to take a look at trends. It allows our teams to be able to see in which direction we're going as far as, discipline goes or PBIS goes. So this particular graph actually shows the average referrals per day. And for this is actually Main Avenue. This is their example. And as you can see, the light green, or I should say the light green is 2018, 2019. And you get to see the average referrals per day. And when we talk about referrals, we're talking about office discipline referrals, students basically being documented that something had happened and that someone needed to intervene with it. And that's what we mean by ODRs, or office discipline referrals. So what you see here is in the green, you see that some of those numbers are pretty high in 2018. You take a look at February, you have 4 referrals per day, average in February. Now, if you fast track to 2019-20, if you take a look at those referrals, they're way down. Now, we'd like to think that, that's all the good work that the teams are doing, that's all the good work that teachers are doing, using those universal tier 1 support pieces in the classroom, recognition with students and positive reinforcement, all those things, having a strong culture at the school, all those things are major parts of this. And if you take a look at that, the referrals are way down. One thing to note, you might notice why there's no data in April, May, June, and July, and it's to the point of what Linda Kate had said earlier. When we had COVID shutdown, some of these systems kind of were on pause. And this is one example of that too. But we still had the data from August to February to take a look at the trends, and we like what we saw. It was very positive. Linda Kate? So this one is another example of Swiss data. This is called the Triangle Report, and this is actually for Taylor Street. What you see is in the green is the percentage of students that had 0 to 1 ODRs for that year. Now, that's basically the office discipline referral. So they got 0 to 1. So if you take a look at from 2018 school year to 2019, that percentage went up, and that's a good thing. That percentage went up from basically from about 60% to over 80% of the students that were in that 0 to 1 ODR representation. The yellow represents 2 to 5 ODRs, and the red represents 6 or more. So what you see in this trend is when you see that the green has gone up, the red has gone down. And that's the inverse relationship we want to be able to see on these triangle reports. Again, this could be attributed to so many different factors. Buy-in on PBIS, Tier 1 supports, Tier 2 supports, students getting some individualized help with some behavior, students receiving mentorship support or a check-in, check-out with a mentorship teacher. All these things are attributed to reasons why we see these positive trends in data. And this is not by chance, this is by purpose. Linda Kate? New to the Swiss suite this year, or to the Swiss data this year is a new Swiss equity report. This is probably well overdue for the Swiss suite, but we're excited to be able to take a look at this and drill down a little bit more to our student groups and take a look at, at equity. Take a look at why certain student groups might be more heavily referred, why certain student groups might be more suspended. But this is one step as far as data goes in taking a look at some of these things. And this parlays exactly with some of the things that we're already doing with restorative practices. We're taking a look at ways that we can work with students to redirect behaviors where it doesn't have to be exclusionary, where they don't have to go home every time if something happens, that we're working with families and students in ways that we can keep them at school, but still let them know that we care about them and we want the best for them, but we are going to hold them accountable too, just like any family would. So we're excited about that, and we're going to take a look at this in a little more detail since it is new. Once we get back with students in our hybrid model, we'll be able to start taking a look at these trends as well. Linda Kate? So every year when we present, part of our report for PBIS does include what we call the BPP funds, or in other words, Bully Prevention Project funds. This does fall under PBIS, and usually it is the work of a few people. In the past, obviously it's been Cindy Lyon, myself, and last year, what was really great about this is the physical education teachers at Robla got involved and said, hey, we have this Bully Prevention Fund grant. How are we using those funds? And what's a great way for us to be able to use that? That ties in to PBIS. It ties into social emotional learning and those strategies. What are some things that we can do? So last year, we were able to get Sammy Circuit on board with all of our schools in the district. He came through, and mind you, this was obviously 2019-20, pre-COVID. Came in, worked with the principals to set up times to be able to do his circuit training with the kids, and I was blown away. I was impressed, as were many of us, that he was very engaging with students. The content that he shared, the physical movement the kids were doing, all the things that were part of his program, and it even included a parent component, a parent night at each site that was well attended. It was amazing. So we felt like, hey, we know Sammy, we know what he's about. We understand that entities and organizations are having to go through a revamping, especially for COVID and virtual learning. So he was able to do that, and we were able to get him back for this year using those BPP funds. And so he's doing some work with us again this year. It is all virtual, but the kids seem to enjoy it. They're getting a lot out of it. He has different episodes that he puts out through the PE teachers, and so the students are still connected to Sammy, and they still remember meeting him in person and doing the circuit training in person, and are able to connect the dots with what they were able to experience last year. So he talks a lot about his own story. He talks a lot about how he was bullied and how, you know, people can rise up. And his famous line is, "You got this." And, you know, there's still kids that say that, "Hey, we got this, you got this." So it's been really uplifting. And I think it's been a step in the right direction for us to be able to use this small pot of money that we have to continue the relationship with Sammy, and for us to continue that work that students were connected to last year. So our final and last slide, Linda Kate, is essentially the goals that Linda Kate and I have as PBIS coordinators in the district. And, you know, and we're going to keep it simple. It's really just getting back to the core of who we are and strengthening our PBIS and Swiss, our data pieces, to build capacity through training and coaching of our Tier 1 and Tier 2 teams. There's such a strong need as well to integrate restorative practices, SEL, into what we're already doing. And in some cases and in some schools, that weaving is already happening. There's so many great things that we see. But restorative practices, you know, all of those things that we're sort of doing in the work we're doing right now are coming to the forefront as necessary needs to be able to address all the things that are going on. Our other goal is to refine PBIS goals and expectations for distance learning. We are doing some of that work already, and we're going to need to gear up for the hybrid model to make sure that our students and our community are ready to go when we come back to school, and they know what the expectations are for behavior, for academics, for all those pieces that make the whole child, that we're able to be ready to go, and we have those expectations posted and you know, rehearsed, and teachers can go over those things, and that's a very integral part of Tier 1 PBIS as well. Of course, fostering resilience in children through PBIS at all levels, and ingraining PBIS as it is into the Robla district DNA. And part of this is happening right now with student recognition. We didn't get a chance to talk about that too much, but even with the current pandemic, going on, even with distance learning, our schools, our teams have found ways to recognize students for logging on to Zoom on time, for being respectful, responsible, ready learners, for just being there, being present, being engaged, you know. And so there's the really neat thing about Robla district is every school's doing things a little different, but it still falls under the PBIS, you know, the PBIS system. So you might have Glenwood doing PBIS rewards over here, and you might have Main Avenue doing shout outs virtually for their kids over here. But the bottom line is kids are being recognized for the behavioral expectations, for the academic expectations that their teachers have. And, you know, and we're connecting with families. We're continuing to build relationships through virtual learning. Whereas if you would have asked anybody 2 years ago, 3 years ago, they would have said, what? Virtual learning for elementary school? And how are you going to pull up, you know, positive recognition for this? How are you going to pull up relational capacity in this way? And we've been able to do it. And that speaks volumes to the work of our teachers, of our staff, of our community, our principals, our directors, our superintendent, our board members, anybody who's connected to Robla district. This has been a monumental team effort, and we'll continue that work. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that presentation. Are there any comments or questions?
You know, I'd like to just say thanks for all the work you do. And the presentation was, it was great. And I'm so pleased to see that Sammy Circuit is back. And I remember attending one of the parent nights, and I brought it to the board before. They've heard me before talk about Sammy Circuit. And the fact that you did it last year and able to do this online, I don't think it would be as meaningful if they were just initiating into it online. The other thing, Mr. Khan, as you were talking about, and I really commend for all that this district is doing too for the kids, but I'm sure there probably is some letdown feelings, like maybe you're not reaching as much, teaching as much. But you know, the one thing, if anything, just of teaching them to behave online as a big step forward that we would never have this opportunity to have. You know, that's I mean, I don't have to tell you what it's like out there on the social media, you know, the behavior that goes on. And, you know, if we can start turning that little thing around, you know, we're going a long way. So I just, again, want to thank all for all you've done.
Thank you.
Yeah, I was thinking something similar. I just want to thank you for continuing the work, even though we were doing the distance learning, and you know, and keeping the level of work up, because of two things. One, as Trustee Boyd said, you know, being online, there are issues, and we know that there are issues, but also because the pandemic has proven to us that we don't know what to expect. And so I'm really glad that you continued the hard work into this, because that meant that, you know, we were ready for or would have addressed any other issues that came up. So thank you very much for continuing such dedicated work and making sure that if anything did come up, we would have addressed it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Any other questions, comments, concerns? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we will be moving on to the next phase of our meeting, which is action items. This is part 4 of our agenda. And 4A is the resolution, excuse me, resolution approving reopening schools within the Robla School District in the transition model. Is there a motion to approve item 4A?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, thank you. It's been moved and second. Mr. Reyes, would you like to comment on this?
Yeah, actually, this is a very, very important topic to discuss amongst the board tonight. As the board is aware, our schools have been closed to in-person instruction pretty much since March. And when we thought back in the springtime that our schools might reopen in June, then we began to work very diligently in Robla to develop a plan for what our schools would be like when they reopen. And because that is the case, we've been working now for months and months in order to create our transition model plan. Now that Sacramento County has moved into tier 2, which is the red tier, schools are allowed to open. Initially, we were told that you had to apply for a waiver, but now County Health has said that that's no longer necessary. As long as the district is in red, then a school may reopen. We do, of course, need to consult, and this is, of course, the way we always do things in Robla, with our employee associations. And we have been in pretty consistent conversations with both CSEA and RTA. We do have a completed memorandum of understanding with CSEA around the transition model, and that work is still in progress with RTA, even though we have tentative agreements around a number of items related to the conditions of reopening. In our latest discussion with RTA, this date of January 19th was proposed, and there's a variety of reasons for us to be looking at that date. We had looked at dates that might be sooner, but we landed on this date for a variety of reasons, and I think it's important for us to make sure our community understands what those are. They are, first of all, that number one, that's when Twin Rivers School District has already decided that they will open. And because we share so many of our families with Twin Rivers, we did think it was important to coordinate those efforts. We don't have a lot of control over what Twin Rivers decides, and we don't always necessarily have to do what Twin Rivers does, but it did make sense in a number of opinions to coordinate that opening with what Twin Rivers is doing. It also made sense from the teachers' end that this would be 2 weeks after we come back from winter break. And there are people who theorize that families may get together over the holidays. And if families do get together over the holidays, there may be some spread of COVID. And if that's the case, this would allow for a 14-day quarantine before schools went back to school. So we would be have a chance to kind of see if there was any impact if indeed people did get together over the holidays. I think the other reason that this date has come up is that we need a little bit more time to be ready. There are a number of things that we want to have happen, or we need to have happen in order to make sure that our schools are ready. And we are working to put those things in place, but we do need some more time. I would point out that probably the most important of those is that we have agreed that it is important to have our air tested by a company that has the ability to test air quality. And we are in the process of putting that quote together. That will come for the board probably at your next meeting. And we've identified the company and we've identified what kind of services we want them to provide to us. But in order for them to test our air, we need to have our correct filters in place. And those filters are currently not in place. The new, I don't understand all the technical aspects of this, but my understanding is that they're called MERV 13 filters. These are the level of filter that the federal Department of Health has recommended for facilities such as schools. And we have ordered our filters and have ordered them some time ago, but because of course the whole country wants these filters, they are on back order, and we are told they probably won't arrive until later in December. So we feel that by the time we can get them and install them, in talking to Mark Langley, our maintenance foreman, we have about 340 of these that need to be installed around in all the buildings around the district. And that will take us a little bit of time to do that. So between the filters arriving, the filters being installed, and then testing the air, we think it would probably take us until about mid-January in order to complete that process. So that was another reason that this date made sense. And we, of course, are recommending that to the board for those reasons. And we wanted to entertain comments and thoughts from the board around this date. But we do think it's important to land on a date because our community does need to have a sense of when this will happen so that people can begin preparing for families for sending their children back to school, and staff, of course, for the arrival of the students and being sure that we have everything in place so that everyone is safe. So those are my thoughts around this idea.
Comments, questions? I'm sure there are. I've got a few, but comments, questions?
I appreciate the thought that went into trying to land on a date, because you're right. The uncertainty, even though we've done the best job that the district can do in trying to make sure that our children continue to be educated. And our teachers preparing and all the preparation that goes into this distance learning model. It for our families and for our staff, that there's still that level of uncertainty about when are you coming back, what are the plans that are going to be put in place for our safe arrival, for as much normalcy as possible, to be quite frank. So landing on a date, definitely very important. Trying to coordinate it to cause as least stress for our families as possible is also sound thinking. And then I thought it was also good that that quarantine, we don't know where a family and staff is going, but to be able to incorporate that time, that quarantine time in there, I think is also very prudent. to, again, allow as much safety to occur as possible, and giving us time to get our building ready. You know, we still don't know everything. We still don't know, you know, all the parameters of trying to reopen school in this environment. And I think that we should definitely acknowledge that. But also, you know, just making sure that we've tried to plan as much as possible, is, you know, the best you can do, and also be flexible when things come up, you know, that we can also, that we need to also attend to. So, you know, I'm definitely for reopening, because this distance learning isn't meant to be permanent. It's been going on a long time as it is. It's not meant to be permanent, and it's not an appropriate way for our children to gain all the knowledge they need, and all the education they need, and all the social emotional support they need, that they find in their schools and their classrooms with their teachers and with all the other support staff. You know, that all of that is missing, and all of that is crucial to our children's development. So I am definitely all for us opening, but knowing that we will still have questions far beyond, you know, our decision, and our support of this evening. But I think we definitely need to move forward with getting back into school, and trying to
Well,
trying to
well
get it.
said.
Thank you, Trustee Howard. You guys know me, and I'm usually a kind of a by the numbers kind of guy. And this is not one of those times where I go by the numbers, because to me, the only number that counts is one. And that means we can't lose, we can't do anything that causes us to lose even one person, whether it's a student or an employee or a student's parents. And so I like the forethought that went into this, every single step of it, looking at the dates. I like the fact that that we included Twin Rivers. Not that we have to, like such as Superintendent Reyes said, not that we have to do anything that Twin Rivers does, but what we do affects our families that interact that go to Twin Rivers. So I like the fact that we are thinking about how this impacts our families, and where they go afterward. And I am definitely approve of purchasing the new filters. That's something that I was kind of concerned with before, getting those MERV 13 filters. And I'm glad that well, one, they are on order, and two, we have a plan for getting them, installing them, and testing them, and making sure everything is working fine. And also, you mentioned the fact that the whole country wants them. Well, also, I think that was also affected by the fires. You know, filters were in high demand after the fire, so that may have affected being able to get those in time as well. So, you know, I am very appreciative of all the hard work that went into this, and you know, we do need to get our kids back in school, because that is the best possible learning environment for them. But we need to do it the right way, and doing it the right way is the best. It's always the best way of doing things. So I'm glad that we thought this out. I also think that this shows that we are flexible enough to adapt to what's going on. Whether you know, we get more information that says you know, we need to change our plans or not, it shows that we are flexible. So thank you very much with in the planning that went into this.
I'd like to chime in real quick, and I too am appreciative of all the work that our collective bargaining units and our staff have done in terms of trying to arrive at a time for us to be able to reopen and work towards reopening. Since the very beginning, since the original shutdown, I've always been the one, and I've always talked about how proud I am that we as a board have always used data and facts to make our decisions, not politics, not emotions, but really focused on making sure that the decisions that we're making are data driven. Obviously, originally when everything shut down, we didn't have a whole lot of data. I mean, we have what we knew from a few months of what the World Health Organization was telling us and what the CDC was telling us, but we really didn't have a lot. So it seemed kind of prudent to shut down for a while just so that we could get a handle on things. Then we made the decision that we were going to be closed till the end of the year. And the idea was, well, you know, the state of California and the county is going to be investing all of these resources into contact tracers. And, you know, by the time the fall comes around, we're going to have data that's going to tell us, you know, who's getting it, how they're getting it, who's getting ill enough to have to go to the hospital, and who's potentially dying. So that once again, we can make policy decisions based on that data and that information. And sadly, when the time came for us to make the decisions about reopening even in the fall, or make any decisions, the state of California and Sacramento County provided absolutely no, well, let me clarify. They provided advice, but what they didn't provide was the data and the science that were supporting that advice. And I think that, and I, once again, I expressed my frustration then about it. And what's been frustrating is now that we actually do have some data and some information, at least on the federal level, and what's been going and what's going on, we're finding that, number one, that amongst schools that either never closed or schools that have since reopened, there has not been an increase, or there has not been an increase in terms of the spread of or the infection of COVID-19, either amongst students or amongst staff. And I'm frustrated because what we're learning from this data is, what we're learning is that even amongst you know, those under the age of 50, there is a 99.8% chance of, or 99.8% survival rate, 99.98, I'm sorry, survival rate. I'm getting frustrated because we also know that data has also been coming out about the damage that we are doing to our children, social, emotional, increases in suicide, all of the various different things that are taking place amongst our students, amongst our children, that are things that are the result of us having been shut down. Here we are now, we're making a decision. And quite frankly, we still don't have any data that supports still being closed. And I don't blame people for being concerned with because of the lack of information. This the information that hasn't been provided by the state or hasn't been provided by the county to support the idea of of continuing to be closed. My frustration is that all of the data that I'm seeing says, number one, we shouldn't have been closed as long as we have been. And number two, we're actually doing damage to our children and to their families every day or every week that we are closed. From the time we were planning back in, thinking there was an opportunity that we were going to reopen in the fall, we should have been working to put in place. And I know that we were working with staff to put in place the MOUs and the distance learning, the hybrid model, and what reopening was going to look like. I'm a little frustrated that things like the filters and whatnot weren't things that were discussed back then, so that they could not have already been in place as we get ready to move forward now. I just have a hard time saying, okay, we're now going to stay closed another 2 months. Beyond when we already know that being closed is doing more harm than good. Now, I am wide open to the idea that I could be wrong and that there's data out there that says that it's doing harm. But so far, since March, so I can safely say about 7 months, as I've been asking for that data from our staff, from the county, from the state, I have seen and been provided with absolutely none. So it's not that I don't want to reopen. It's not that I don't have faith in our plan to reopen. My frustration and the reason why I cannot support this resolution is that I believe that we need to be looking at opening up sooner rather than later. I'll just leave it at that.
Well, I think I'd like to comment on this. And Craig, I commend you on feeling comfortable enough to present your views in this. I have to disagree. Well, for a couple of things, I'd love to see the data that you're talking about because I have not seen that. And I think you're right in the sense that we have not seen a lot of data coming out of the county or the state, but we have seen plenty of data coming out of at the federal level or the national level, and we have seen plenty of reports on schools opening up. And there being spread outbreaks and schools having to close down. I have seen plenty of that in the news, and that to me is enough data to underscore the fact that we really should be safe, and that the plans that we did put in place were the correct plans. We have seen not just K-12 schools, but also universities opening or not closing and having those outbreaks. And so I have to disagree. I think that that what we did was prudent for the time, and I think that what we have seen in the news has supported our actions completely. So that data to me is there, and you see it every day.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. President, I would encourage you to please. I'm sharing at least a couple of different articles and data and information that speaks specifically to this. That speaks specifically to this issue. The fact is you mean across the board, people are starting to agree that schools reopening is not causing increases in infections. I'm
not seeing
once
that.
Again, if there's data that's out there, I've been asking for it for 7 months. If you've got it, please share it because I haven't seen it.
I have not seen any evidence that schools that have stayed open have not contributed to COVID-19 spreading. What we see is COVID-19 spreading every day. We are at the highest levels since it started, and that is coming from all different levels. It's coming from every age bracket. So I'm sorry, I have to disagree.
Well, facts don't lie. I just know that in the entire United States, I believe there's been of every case, there's been one death under the age of 18, none of elementary school age. Absolutely none. The infection amongst those of elementary school age is like 0.0001%. And once again, as has been stated and reported over and over again in the media, and I'm not just offering this as hyperbole. I'm telling you, I've actually been doing the research. I've been looking up the information. I've been trying to find out, okay, Craig, am I wrong? And the fact is none of the data supports the idea of us continuing to be closed. The only thing that supports it I won't even get into the politics of it, but it really just comes down to politics. And I get where we're at. We'd rather be safe than be sorry. But living life, and I'm just going to be real, living life is in all that we do is a calculated risk. And I heard what you said in the very beginning. You said, if we lose even one, well, if we lose even one position, then we should never let any of our students ever get in a car because there are car accidents and people die every day in car accidents. Matter of fact, we should never open our schools because our students could potentially die of pneumonia or die of the common cold because people die every day of the common cold. Life is a calculated risk. And all I'm saying is that that's why we need to look at the information, look at the data, and then we make decisions to allow us to live life in the safest way possible. And continuing to stay locked up and closed up is not living life.
With all due respect, I'm sorry, Trustee Howard. Let me just do one more response.
Back and forth, but I don't really want to hear the back and forth. But it's just a couple of things. I agree with the fact that we should have been gathering actual materials all along, so we wouldn't have to be waiting on filters or any other kind of materials at this point. Because whether we're going to open up in the fall or we're opening up in January, that is one thing. We should have continued to make sure that we ordered the materials and have it ready to go. That's definitely, I think, true, because that's happening a lot of places. But where I disagree is this is just beyond numbers of people dying or getting sick, etc. Children do not educate themselves in the building. There are staff, there are other grown-ups, there are that actually do the work, that are that have been impacted by COVID in their families, that have gone through some very, in my experience, very devastating impacts from COVID. But they are the ones that need to go in and teach these children who may not contract, whose numbers, as you said, I haven't seen those numbers, but you said that may have a low contraction of COVID, but that doesn't have anything to do with the adults that have to walk in there every day. So we have to keep them and their families in mind, as well as we build, as we have been building the plans to come back, as we have made the choices not to come back when, we did. Again, there's data everywhere, and all you can do is try to make the strongest choice for the well-being of those, we serve. Will we always make the best one? Can't even say to that. But I do know that it is beyond just the numbers of who's getting sick and their ages. It is also about those who serve them. That's all.
Exactly. And thank you for that, Trustee Howard. And that's where I am. And I know there's a lot of going back and forth, but hey, I don't think the car comparison is an apt comparison because of what you just said. Because if you look at, I'm going back to the numbers, we have 9 million people with this. We have 229,000 deaths, and those deaths are coming from somewhere. So yeah, the death rate may be low in kids, but they transmit it to our staff, to their parents, to their grandparents, and that's what I'm talking about. If we can prevent those, that's important. Kids, they may not be completely affected by this when they catch it, but when their parents and their grandparents start passing away because of that, that affects everyone, and that's where I am. We can prevent something like that, and I'm right with both you on the fact that I think we should have been ordering equipment, things like that earlier. And I've had a conversation with Superintendent Reyes about that because I thought we were kind of ahead of that. But I don't think it would have changed my mind on whether or not we should open when we or close when we did. There was a lot of other information in there regarding that. So it would have been nice to have more hardware in place, but it wouldn't have changed my mind one bit.
Well, I will just share with you, there are a number of links that I've already provided in the chat section. All I can say is I've looked at the data. We've always prided ourselves on making decisions based on the data, and unfortunately, I don't feel like that's the case now. I know you all feel like you do, and I have all faith. I have faith in you guys. So with that, unfortunately I still can't support the resolution, but I understand why you do.
Okay, I've been waiting patiently, so I'm going to butt in. We all like data. Data makes a black and white world as black and white as possible. The more data, the more black and white. Unfortunately, in the world, we still have a lot of gray issues. And I'm sorry, I'm not going to, there's politics is involved here. I don't care. Politics runs our lives. And I just can't continue to separate it. And you may call it political, but I'm not going to trust any statistic that the federal government is giving me right now. I know the percentage is low, but 260,000 deaths or whatever it is not low. And having the worst record of any nation in the world is not indicative of doing the right thing. And the gray area is, as everybody says, my concern, and I know it's real low in the kids, but transmitting it beyond is the problem. My brother-in-law did a couple of tours in Afghanistan as a medic and still works in the medical field. I just found out today he has COVID. Not that it has anything to do with it, it's just real personal. We talk about the deaths, and do we forget about all the people that are maimed for long term? We don't even know if it may be forever. The people that are suffering, if we really listen, I like to listen to facts. I like the science. The science is now finding that this is an arterial disease. It's not one of the lungs. That's why it's affecting different parts of the bodies, because it's affecting the arteries. The lungs is a big part of the arterial system. The more science we have, the more data we can accumulate and the more we can know. There was also, I don't know if anybody noticed, 2 days ago, there was a 14-year-old girl, I don't know where she's from in this country, that developed I don't know if it's an amino acid or what, but something that adheres to the COVID virus that changes its shape and won't let it adhere to anything. And they're hoping that she may be the beginning of finding a cure for this. She won a $25,000 prize for being the youngest scientist. You know, it might not seem like we have anything to do with this, but we're learning in other ways. We're all learning as this goes on. We don't know the answers. Data is not giving us the answers. Data is not out there. It's there's some data, but it's so scattered, it's not valid. It's just an invalid. I think I'm just going to wrap up by saying that my focus is, you know, I think it's easy for me. The fact that the filters are coming at this date makes this really palatable. And also agreeing with Twin Rivers is a minor thing. I mean, if it's going to be somewhere in that area, it's a lot. But the filters helps make my decision easier, because I have been adamant about airflow from, I think it was March 13th when I was in the office of Bell Avenue talking about it with Lisa Bell and the staff in there. So I'm going to support that. You know what? I would just want to say too, Craig, that I really am not way off from where you're at. I was at Stanford Settlement yesterday handing out food bags. Some of the kids from the teen center were over there helping too. And I mean, I saw these kids, the discussion was going on. They're itching to get back in. I know these kids want to get back in. I don't have kids myself, but I've seen them out there. And the fact, you know, I've been repeating it, something that superintendent said to us the other day that I don't know, I'm going to repeat it. This is not distance learning, this is emergency learning. And that makes a lot of sense. I know we're not accomplishing nearly what we need to accomplish in the classroom. So it's important for me to get them back in there. Social, emotional, number one for me. And then educational second. I'm going to just wrap up. I've gone on long enough. That's my piece, but I do support this motion. I appreciate everybody's input that has spoken up here too.
Thank you, Trey.
I am I'm glad at least we have a date, honestly, because we've been postponing. Every time when somebody asks about when we could reopen, we would reopen, and we keep postponing the day and postponing the day. And as you guys all know, this has been affecting our kids and our families, and I'm glad that we have a date. And we just need to work in what we have. We need to work in our filters, in our systems, and get ready for opening school. That's just what I said.
Thank you. I'll make one last comment, and of course, if anyone else has anything, but I really appreciate all the comments said tonight, even if I disagree with them. And you know, part of me, like I said before, I'm by the numbers. I look at the data and I care about that. But you know, I have 2 kids right now that are in school, and I look at them too, and they are suffering. They want to get back, but I know that they will be suffering so much more if they lost their grandmother or if they lost their parent. Those me or my wife. Those are the things that are driving me, because that's real right there. That hits me. You know, if something happens to me, because I don't know, I consider myself healthy and strong. If something happens to me, what happens to my kids in the future? Those are these are the kind of conversations or kind of thoughts that I'm having for all of our families, all 2,000 of them. So that's where I am, and that's why I tend to play it safe on these things. Again, I appreciate all the comments that have been said tonight. I really do, whether I agree with them or disagree with them. And I see the information that Craig has, that Trustee DeLuz has given us, and I will look at that. Thank you very much. Are there other comments? Okay, then we can move on to a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Can I get a hand or something so I can see? Okay, thank you.
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Oppose?
Nay.
Abstain? Okay, motion carries 4-1. Thank you. Moving on to item 4B, contracts with educational consultants for the Robla Resilience Project Professional Learning. Is there a motion?
Mr. Barnes, I'm sorry, could I just interrupt for just a moment?
Sure.
Sorry, before we get to that item and before we leave, thank you all for your discussion around the opening date. I know that our community really appreciates that the board is so thoughtful around the decisions that they make. I just feel compelled to say something about our staff, because I don't want the community to get the wrong impression that anybody on our staff has sat around twiddling their thumbs, not ordering materials that we needed. And I want to assure the board and assure our community that we have been ordering, we can show you the purchase orders for all of the hundreds of thousands of dollars that we have been spending on all of the supplies that we need, filters and many, many more things. And there are things that we cannot control. There's information that we don't get in a timely way. I feel like they deserve the acknowledgement that they have been working hard to be timely in getting these things done. And it is unfortunate the filters have been used as an example tonight, and that is true. But I don't feel that that's reflective of how our staff has been conducting themselves. That's all I wanted to say.
Thank you for that, Ms. Reyes. And you know, for me, it was more a matter of I think it was more a matter of not knowing that they hadn't arrived yet, or so. You know, because I was under the impression that they had. And I think that was based on the fact that, you know, all this had already happened. So thank you for clarifying that. I really appreciate that.
And we don't think they're sitting around twiddling their thumbs.
Yeah.
This is not that kind
No,
of.
we definitely don't think that. I apologize if that's how I came across.
Yeah, we
No,
don't.
I apologize if I over exaggerated. I just wanted to be sure that.
No, I appreciate you looking out for our staff, allowing us the opportunity for that clarification.
We are happy and proud of our staff, our administration, and we know with the fires and the things and other things get out of control too. But let's move forward and let's get it done. All right.
Yes. Okay, moving on to 4B is I've already kind of I'll say it again. This is contracts with educational consultants for the Robla Resilience Project Professional Learning. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Moved. Second.
Okay, thank you. It's been moved in second. Mr. Reyes, would you like to comment on this?
Yes, I would, and I will be brief. We've been discussing the Resilience Project for quite some time. We've been planning this project for months, also months and months now. I am very proud that even in the midst of a pandemic, we haven't lost sight of some very important other things that we need to be focusing some time and energy on. I do know that looking at these contracts, that it does appear that, you know, that's a lot of people and a great deal of money. But I will say this: it's a very important topic that we have been very thoughtful around who we are engaging in this work. That we had the work that's been going on. I will say is phenomenal, and I don't use that word lightly. I feel that this is going to be something that we can be very proud of in terms of doing a better job, even though Robla already does a great job of reaching its community, of doing a better job in the current times and focusing on anti-racism and equity and you know, systemic bias. And I feel like this is a very worthy investment, but I also feel it's worth mentioning that we have been working very diligently to find some additional funding for this project. We've applied for one grant to the state, and we are in the process of applying for another grant. to sustain this work over time. So I just wanted to make sure the board was aware of that.
Questions, comments, concerns?
I guess I'm just a little not as I guess part of my concern is that I've seen some of these programs implemented in other areas and whether it's at the state level or at various different counties, and I have some concerns over some of these programs. You share with me, Superintendent, you and I have talked, and I have faith in some of the people who are involved in this, like some of these folks that I actually do know. I just want to make sure that we as a board are fully aware of whether it's materials or what's being included and involved in this sort of training. At least I won't speak for the rest of the board. I want to know in detail what is being involved in these in this particular the Robla resiliency project. It's a concern of mine because some of these programs go much farther than what I believe they should. I don't believe this one will, but I'd like to, I'd like to be on top of it just so that I know.
And I would say in response to that, Mr. Deleuze, a couple of things. You have expressed that concern, and we've spoken both at board meetings and privately as well. And I am very committed to making sure the board has a great deal of information about the work that's happening. The book that is the focus of the work initially has been distributed to the board, as well as an outline of the work that will happen. I think that it's very important to say that one of the things that we have not done with resilience that we are doing, and one of the contracts you see here, is for evaluation. And we are very committed to evaluating the impact of this work. And we have included in this packet a contract with consultants who are both university professors, one out of UC Davis and one out of Arizona State, who have developed a comprehensive, we've been working on this for a very long time, a comprehensive approach to evaluating this work, to see that not only if it's impactful, so that we are getting a return for our investment, but we also see that it's making a difference with our staff and with our students. And thirdly, in order to do future planning, if this is something that's effective, but we need to tweak it and make it more effective in the future, we can learn from doing a very serious evaluation of this work. And so that's one of the ways we're trying to get at, Mr. Deleuze, exactly what you're talking about. Having this not be something that's just, too far off in any one direction, nor is it something that's just a trivial approach to some really important topics.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Any other
I think I'm right along the lines with what Trustee Boyd was saying, because as we come up, I was also thinking that, can we, what are the parameters of what we're trying to build on here, and looking at some ways to, yes, evaluate, is the program making a difference in the lives of our staff and our kids? So that's right on time that you added that piece of it, because as we move forward, this is what we want to see. We don't want to contribute to just the blind cause, just, out there just because it has, a good title and summary, that it's going to do what it's supposed to do. We want to keep try to make what we're involved in the best we can. So I think that was a good piece to add to it, to strengthen ourselves and our efforts.
I made sure that the evaluation included a comprehensive report to the board that will be given presented to you at the conclusion of this year's work.
You are the man.
Thank you for that.
I'd just like to say I appreciate Trustee Deleuze's question, and I really appreciate Superintendent Ray's answers. It's good to know that, again, we're on top of trying to do something in the right direction. Thank you.
Yeah, and it's good to show the depth of it too. And Mr. Ray's response and who he's bringing in shows that we're not just looking for cursory numbers. We're looking for in-depth information on this. So thank you both
And we will continue to send invitations to the board, and we hope that you will consider attending the sessions, the first of which is Monday at 8:30.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Are there other comments or questions or concerns? Okay, we can move on to a vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. Sorry, my phone for some reason thought I was talking to it.
Get out of my conversation, Siri.
I did do that, right? Motion carries unanimously. Okay. Let's see. Item 4C. Approve the contract with Quality Sound to install a boardroom production video system. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and second. Mr. Reyes, would you like to comment on this?
Yes, so I don't know if any of the board members have had the opportunity to drive by the district office in the last week or so, but our new building has arrived on site. And I encourage you maybe on your way to and fro at any point to just kind of veer over to Rose Street and see the new building. It's exciting for many reasons, but one of the most important is that it contains our new boardroom. I did have the very unofficial opportunity to peek at the new boardroom, and I'm very excited. But one of the things that we've learned, and we do hope that we learn some important lessons from the pandemic that are positive things, and one of them is that we've learned that we have the capacity to live stream our board meetings and to take quality video. And so what the plan is and what this contract is about is installing the appropriate equipment in that new boardroom so that we are able to live stream our meetings, to live stream professional development that takes place in that room, to record activities that are happening in there, and to have quality sound for meetings that are happening in there. And this is, again, not a small amount of money, but we think a really important investment for moving forward in the district in terms of us communicating well with our community.
When did this new building arrive?
It was put in place last Wednesday and Thursday, so it's
really. Oh, I
there.
don't know how I missed it because I went right by there. Huh.
Yeah, I was by to pick up my crunchy apple today, and I didn't realize it was there.
Maybe you should turn off the cloaking device.
You'll walk right past it, Mr. Boyd.
Wow.
You know, I had the dogs with me.
They couldn't sniff it out?
Interesting. Okay, are there any other questions, comments, concerns regarding this? Okay, we can move on to a vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries unanimously, which brings us to item 4D, the last item of the night. This is a resolution approving the grant application for the Sacramento Metro Air Quality Management District, which is SMAQ MD, Lower Emission Vehicle Incentive Program, the LEVIP. Is there a motion to approve this?
So moved.
So moved. Second.
It's been moved in second. Mr. Reyes, would you like to comment on this?
Yes, and Mr. Castillo is also in the room tonight, and he would be happy, I know, to answer any questions or provide any more details. But simply put, this project is the purchase of electric buses, which is something that we know is important for the future, and the infrastructure that it will take. And we're getting very strong incentives to do this. So for a relatively small investment on our part, because a number of grants will be part of this that will actually pay the companies for these vehicles, we'll get, well, Gerardo, remind us, we'll get how many buses?
5 buses. Five. Mm-hmm.
5 brand new electrical buses. And in the end, the cost of the district is
157,905. But it costs, the total cost is $2.5 million for this project. So this is about 6% investment for or the total cost. And I want to mention too that we also apply for other grants. There's like an additional $65,000 per bus, but we have not received it yet, so I did not include it in this package unless we receive it. So that amount is possible that will go even lower if we get these grants that we apply, but we need to get it. Yes. No?
Thank you for saying that, Mr. Castillo, because the cost is 2.5 million, not 157,905. If we had to do this on our own,
yes,
we would be paying.
No way.
This is a $2.5 million cost that we are spending $157,905 on. I just think that's phenomenal. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I just wanted to drive that part home. Did you have any other comments, Mr. Reyes?
I did not.
Oh, any questions, comments, concerns?
I just like to say, after I read about this in the packet, I bought a plug-in hybrid about a month and a half ago. Took advantage of the 0% interest rate. So after I read this, I went looking to see what I could find, anything applying to mine. I found $1,600 in rebates that I didn't know existed on my car because of that board item. So thank you, Mr. Castillo.
Oh. Awesome.
This is pretty awesome. We're remodeling schools. We're getting electric buses. Oh my goodness, little Robla is doing some things.
Yeah. I hope we're going to have a nice little, I don't know, debut or something for these electric buses. I just think that's phenomenal.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I wanna give thanks to Patty Brown for all her work that she did. This project really started over a year and a half ago. We finalized it. We get into that now, but it started a while back. So I just want to give her thanks for looking for this items.
Thank you.
Thank you, Patty.
Thank you, Patty. That is exciting.
Mm-hmm. Okay, if there are no other questions, comments, or concerns, we can go to a vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. Which brings to close our action items, and we can move on to future board member requests. And in true Zoom fashion, I'm just going to go in Zoom order. Trustee Cardona, do you have any future requests?
No, I just want to tell thank you to all the Robla School employees, staff, superintendents, board, and teachers, because I know they are doing their best, and we are proud of them. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Trustee DeLuz?
Nothing to request, but once again, would also like to echo Trustee Cardona. We very much appreciate every single one of you, staff, volunteers, and parents.
Yes.
All the work that you guys are doing to help be a part of the Robla team and help us to educate the kids.
Yep.
Trustee Howard?
Nope, they've got enough to do. We don't need to ask them to do anything else. Just let them focus on what they're doing. So no.
Trustee Boyd?
Yeah, I was wondering if we could have a discussion at the next meeting about that board position for New Hope. Maybe suggesting we might put that on the organizational calendar in December, that position. So if we could discuss it at the next meeting, I think we still have time to do that if we wanted to do it.
Yeah, I'll talk to Mr. Pagani about what kind of timeline they're looking at.
Okay.
Okay.
And for me, I have we talked about earlier about getting a financial report on how much we have possibly saved during the shutdown, and I'd love to hear that. Especially, I think that'd be great with our a budget report, and also any information we have on our program for helping students get eye exams and glasses. I think that's important. As I sit and stare at my screen and try to read, I think about things like that. And I do want to reiterate what other board members have said. Thank you to our staff for working so diligently on everything that they've done.
Mr. Barnes, if I could interrupt, or when you're finished, I wanted to say.
I'm finished.
First of all, yes, that report, Mr. Castillo has already prepared that memo, and I will have that for the board at during my next report. And I know it's not customary for me to make requests during this time on the agenda, but I did want to ask the board about meeting in person again. I feel like it's time for us to do that. I feel if we're telling our staff that it's safe to be together and that we know how to follow procedures and do things in the right way, that we can make sure that the board is safe, and we can create a way for us to once again be getting together live. And I would propose that we would start that in November.
I second that emotion.
Yes. Yep. As long as we're following all the guidelines.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yep. Safety first. That's it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, before I adjourn the meeting, I do want to say a few thank yous, and that's to the people that no one sees but are absolutely crucial. Our IT person, Adam Vivier, and our board assistant, Shari Malaspine. Thank you very much for everything that you have done. And anyone else that I'm not mentioning, I can't mention everyone's name, but just want to say thank you. And also to our board, to our presenters for the meeting tonight, because in this situation, it's just kind of difficult. You're sharing not just your information, but also your homes. And that's a bit of an inconvenience on your family to kind of work around us. So I just want to say thank you to everyone else who has participated in this, whether they wanted to or not, the family members there. And with that, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night, everybody.